Welcome to r/Am I the Jerk, where OP overhears his girlfriend's conversation and really isn't happy about it. I heard my girlfriend talking about how hot my best friend is. My girlfriend Rachel, who's 30, and I, 30 male, have been together for 5 years with a strong relationship. However, yesterday, I accidentally overheard Rachel and her best friend Emily discussing my best friend Nick's appearance. He's 32 male. The conversation was predominantly Rachel describing Nick as ridiculously hot and charming. Emily asked Rachel why she chose me over Nick, and Rachel replied, laughing, as if Nick would have ever chosen me. I felt hurt, disrespected, and angry. At worst, it sounds like Rachel just wants to hook up with him. At best, she's being disrespectful to our relationship and me. When I confronted her later in private, Rachel apologized but dismissed the conversation as girl talk that I wasn't meant to hear. She claimed I'm overreacting and should focus on our relationship. We argued. I expressed my concerns, saying it's okay to have a crush, but to have a crush on my best friend, who we hang out with almost every day, and then to let her friend undermine our relationship is wrong on so many levels. Rachel accused me of being overly dramatic, controlling her speech, and lacking trust. This happened yesterday. We haven't fought since, but there is unresolved tension between us. Am I the jerk? OP on if his girlfriend was trying to be with Nick. She was gaslighting and manipulating me. She really made me feel like some jerk who's trying to control how she feels with her twisted logic. I know I'm not really explaining it well, but she made me second-guess myself about this entire thing. She has freedom of speech, and so do you. You can reply to her with honesty. Not the jerk. Well, you were clearly the second option, the consolation prize, if it were. What you do with that information is up to you. I'd be rethinking the relationship, and if I stayed in it, I probably wouldn't hang out with Nick as much with the girlfriend there. Also, she knows she messed up saying it where you could overhear it, and that's why she's upset about you trying to control her speech. You aren't. She's just trying to gaslight you into feeling bad about saying something about it. Update 3 weeks later. After I confronted her about what I heard, she completely shut down. Every time I brought it up, she dismissed my concerns, telling me I was overreacting and being too sensitive. She made me feel like I was the one with the problem, not her. It was gaslighting at its finest. I talked to Nick about what happened. Even he was weirded out by Rachel's behavior, saying she crossed a major boundary and admitted her actions gave him the ick. Hearing that from him made me realize I wasn't overreacting. Rachel's constant dismissal and refusal to acknowledge the hurt she caused finally made me realize I deserved better. I ended our 5-year relationship. Now Rachel's telling our friends that I broke up with her over harmless girl talk. It's infuriating because it's not the truth. But what really got me was when Rachel texted Nick just a few days after we broke up, asking him to go to a movie. Nick told her to never contact him again and blocked her number. I'm still hurting, but I know I made the right decision. Being single is better than being with someone who doesn't respect me, and that's it. Not the jerk. If Nick is telling the truth and he didn't hook up with her, he's a real one. Buy him a beer and invite him over. Hang out and watch a movie. Make the ex jealous. OP. He didn't hook up with her. He's been with his girlfriend since high school, and he's not someone who would cheat. The audacity for her to seriously reach out to Nick right after you guys broke up. Nick sounds like a ride or die homie. OP. He is. Does the ex know about Nick's girlfriend? OP. She knew her. We've hung out together as a group. The fact that she made it seem like she was best friends with Nick's girlfriend while wanting him the entire time is creepy and weird. I'm 35 male. My mother, who's 58, has a new fiance who's 24, and he wants me to call him dad. So here's the background. I'm a 35-year-old guy, and my dad passed when I was 19, leaving my mom with me and my 2 younger siblings. Since then, she's been raising us, and over the years, she started dating again. Our family setup is pretty close. My mom and I have houses that back onto each other with a gate in between, so it's normal for me to go over for dinner or to help out. She often does my laundry, and my siblings and I have dinner at her place every other Friday night or so. Over time, her boyfriends have been getting progressively younger. This never bothered us because we just want her to be happy. She's been upfront about wanting to remarry, and we've always been supportive. Her latest guy, let's call him Phil, is by far the most serious. They started dating around last June, and he proposed at the beginning of autumn. They're planning to get married next summer, and while my siblings and I were surprised at first, we're happy for her. Phil's a nice guy, and they seem to genuinely love each other. But here's where things start to get strange. This weekend, Phil calls me and asks if I could come over to their place. I figured he needed help with some do-it-yourself project, so I said sure, and after work I went over. When I got there, he called me Sport and said we needed to have a talk. I should mention he's got a habit of calling me and my brother names like Sport, Kid, Scout, Little Buddy, or even Red and Blue randomly. My brother is 30, by the way. Once he even called my sister Princess, but she shut that down pretty quickly. So he starts talking about how he's always wanted to be a father and raise a son of his own, then drops the bombshell. Now, I know I can never replace your father, but it would mean the world to me if you would call me Dad. I couldn't help it. I let out a little snicker. But then I realized he was serious. He looked like he was about to cry, and he didn't drop it. He went on about how being a man to him means providing for and protecting his family, and he wanted me and my siblings to be part of that family. He repeated that he didn't want to replace my dad, but that he was ready to step up as my dad. Meanwhile, I'm sitting here thinking, dude, I'm a decade older than you. I don't need a dad, let alone someone I barely know to be one. Still, I tried to stay polite and asked if he really meant it. He started getting even more emotional, talking about how he wanted to go on camping trips with me or take me to a baseball game, even though I don't like baseball, and how he had joined the Lions Club this year and wanted me to join as his son. To make it weirder, I'm already a Shriner, so this whole speech about charity and manly service wasn't the big deal he seemed to think it was. Eventually, I told him that this was getting a bit too weird and that I was going home. He looked really upset, but I left anyway. Later, I called my brother, who said the whole thing sounded really weird. The next day, my mom called me. She said that Phil was very upset and even a bit depressed. I told her that if he was embarrassed, there was no need to be. I understood he was just excited about the wedding and we could laugh this off as a funny story later on. But she said he wasn't upset about being embarrassed. He was hurt because he had poured his heart out and felt that I rejected him. She admitted it was a bit kooky, but explained that this was his way of proving to himself that he's a man. I got a little heated and told her it's not my job to validate his masculinity and that calling me son doesn't make him a man. It just made him look a bit off. She didn't appreciate that and we ended the call on a tense note. She called back 10 minutes later and we both apologized. She then pleaded with me to just go along with it until they could have kids of their own. Apparently, they're planning to try IVF because she's not ready to give up on being a mom. While I have my own reservations about that idea, I decided to leave it alone. I've thought about it, and I know I'm not going to call him Dad. I had a dad, and he's the only dad I'll ever need or want. But I still want to find a way to tell Phil and my mom that without causing a major rift. We're all close, and with them living so nearby, I don't want this to cause ongoing tension. Any advice on how to let them down gently? Edit. I showed my brother this post, and he laughed so hard he nearly choked. He suggested we start calling Phil Dr. Phil and switch his nicknames for us, calling each other Red and Blue. Edit 2. For those wondering, Phil has no access to my mom's money or assets. She rents her place, which came furnished, and she doesn't have any significant financial resources. So, as far as we can tell, there's no financial motive here. Your mom is really weird for dating this clearly mentally underdeveloped guy. I love my wife and want to be with her more than anyone else. I'm going to suggest we divorce anyway. We don't fight. There's been no infidelity. There's nothing we're on. Our kid is happy and healthy. Financially, we're fairly successful. Neither of us has any serious health issues or has gained significant weight. We've been together for 15 years. We're great partners and friends. But she doesn't seem to have any interest in me anymore, and it hurts so much. To start, she doesn't like spending time with me. When we do spend time together, she usually just stares at her phone. I can't compete with Instagram. She treats hugging me like a chore. At one point, she even had it on a daily to-do app. She would hug me, then check it off. It felt bad, like pity hugs, but it wasn't as bad as when she decided even that was too much effort. A kiss is something I have to initiate or it doesn't happen at all. She seems to have no interest in it, and I rarely try anymore. We never hook up. Of course, it all started after we became parents, but at this point, I don't think that matters. For a while, I convinced myself that if I just did more, she'd finally feel better, have more time and energy to spend with me, and finally come around. But now, I do all the cooking, all the cleaning, and most of the parenting. I'm putting the toddler to bed almost every night, which isn't always easy. And when that's finally done, she's either already gone to bed or she's sitting there staring at her phone, with the kitchen a mess, waiting for me to clean it. I'm exhausted and it's changed nothing. I tried last week to talk about how it felt like she doesn't like me anymore. She said she just needed more time to herself, to be alone. So I said, why don't I take the kid all day Saturday and you just go do your own thing and get that alone time? Then after, we could spend a date night. She was all for it. Fantastic. I had a great day with our toddler. She went out shopping and doing her own thing. I put the kid to bed early because a nap had been skipped and we decided to watch a TV show together. Except she spent the whole time staring at her phone instead. I doubt she could tell me much about what we watched. Occasionally, I'd laugh at something funny and she'd have no idea why. Fine, okay, maybe she's not liking the show. That happens. I made a suggestion we go back to the bedroom, which is how I usually try to get things started. She said yes, and for just a moment I got my hopes up. Maybe I'd finally given enough. Every time I kissed her, she started talking about something that she was thinking about. Over and over, new topics. Just basically demonstrating again and again that she had no interest in kissing me. For 15 minutes, each time I tried to make conversation. We laughed about stuff, discussed what needed to be done this week, and so on. But any attempt to restart anything romantic was rebuffed again and again with the same tactic. Oh sure, kissing was fine, but did I mention I bought a really cute shirt? I gave up. I said I needed to go do some chores. She helpfully suggested additional things I needed to do before bed, and then she went to bed and I went and did my chores, had a beer, and cried. But when morning came, I was at peace with it all. There is no person I want to be in a relationship with more than her. She's my best friend, my partner, a great parent, a genuinely funny person. But I don't want to be in a relationship with someone who isn't interested in me romantically. Am I being unfair to say that? My need is not just to hook up. My need is to be with someone who likes kissing me, who wants to be with me, someone who isn't bored of me. I can't change how she feels, but I can decide to change a situation that makes me feel terrible and lonely all the time. So I'm going to ask her to either go back to couples therapy or separate, and it's going to suck. No, there's no chance she's cheating. She's kind of incapable of being anything but brutally honest. It's caused problems in the past. If she were seeing someone else, I honestly think she'd tell me about it, strange as that sounds. Yes, this is my fault as well. I don't communicate enough about how I feel. I put her happiness ahead of my own too much. I'm getting therapy for that and more. I don't think it changes how she feels. It honestly doesn't sound like she's a great friend, partner, or parent. Are you sure you're not still seeing some idealized version of her? Because she sounds kind of awful. Maybe removing the rose-colored glasses would help you move on. OP. 15 years of good times is a lot of momentum to keep a relationship going. There are 1,000 positive things I can say about her, things I love about her, and none of them help explain the thing I need to get off my chest right now. But I've been smitten with her since the day we met. She's fascinating in ways very few women I've ever met are. She's the person I want most to be with. My wife of 4 years is over-teaching our kids who are 2 and 4, and everything has to be a learning experience. No, my wife is not actually a teacher. Our kids are now at ages where they're becoming their own little people, and it's amazing. Our older son absolutely loves being a big brother, and the younger one is growing by leaps and bounds. Life is pretty good, except we can't leave the house without her turning it into some grand learning experience or skill-building opportunity. To illustrate, let's start with a recent trip to the grocery store. Our older son, who we'll call John, was walking, and the younger one, Bill, was riding in the cart. We had maybe 10 items to buy, just a quick, simple trip. But my wife started in on John immediately. John, can you count how many items are in the cart? What line should we go in? Do we need to wait our turn? Is it our turn yet? Oh, look, it's our turn. She went on and on and on. Everyone in line was rolling their eyes and giving me sympathetic looks. Sometimes my wife lets Bill, who's only 2, help with chores or meal prep, and it's the same story. Bill, this is a spoon. This is a knife. This is called a ladle, and this is what we do with it. This is a cup. These are noodles. He's 2, for heaven's sake. Every single thing is learned to death. The other night we went for a walk and a little kitten darted across the street. A normal parent might just ask their kid what animal it was, say good job if they said cat or kitten, and move on. John said it was a cat, and my wife said, yes, it's a cat, but it's a baby cat. Do you know what a baby cat is called? Is a cat a mammal or a reptile? I told her I was getting a headache and headed home early. It wasn't a lie, really. Something similar happened at the fair. The kids didn't get to go on a single ride or eat any treats because they were too busy building skills. I can't handle that phrase anymore. It makes me want to scream. When I tell her, honey, just let them have fun. We can talk about what they learned on the way home. She says, but this is such a great opportunity for them to build skills. They won't remember in 2 hours. If I want to get them a simple toy, something purely fun, it's a no-go because it doesn't build skills. Or if it's something like a ball, she'll say it's great for helping them build coordination skills. Every single activity is a learning experience. I've tried talking to her. I've said it's wonderful she wants to give our kids a head start and that I appreciate her focus on teaching them life skills. But not everything needs to be a lesson. They can't even just color random designs on paper. They have to go over primary colors and then do some enrichment activity. After the fair, I snapped. That night, she remarked how much fun the kids had. I'm not proud of it, but I blew my stack. This was after at least 100 conversations, each with a different approach, trying to get through to her. I ended up shouting, "No, they did not have fun. They didn't get to ride the Ferris wheel. They got a physics lesson. They didn't get to eat anything fried. They got a nutrition lesson. They didn't get to play games. They got a counting session. They didn't get to try winning a goldfish. They got a zoology lesson. Nothing they did could be considered fun in any universe." Now, according to her, I'm an apathetic father who leaves her to do all the teaching for my own kids. I don't want to deny them educational experiences altogether, but they need to just be kids sometimes too. She thinks she's making learning fun, but nothing is fun anymore. I can't listen to more of these buzzwords like skill building and enrichment repeated 50 times a day without feeling like I'm going to lose my mind. Update. To answer some questions, yes, the kids are very bored. Bill is only 2, so he's not very verbal yet, but John has asked more than once why we can't just do what we came to do. Using the fair as an example, he asked why he couldn't go on the Ferris wheel. My wife ignored him and just kept teaching. That's part of why I was so mad that night. It seems far more about her than about the kids' development. I talk to my sons as much as I can, or at least I try to, but I can hardly say anything to them without her coming in and teaching or suggesting we do something to build skills. It's like she's getting in the way of my relationship with my kids. I didn't realize how much I had bottled up until I saw how others responded to my post. But here's what happened next. It couldn't have been timed better if I'd planned it. So John is 4 and he's in preschool 3 days a week. The very day I posted, I got a call from his teacher. She told me John is a bright boy with a great vocabulary and memory, but what she said next made me tear up and seriously consider a divorce. There have been several instances where John has been left to his own devices during unstructured playtime. They have some structured activities, some semi-structured ones like painting, where they're free to paint whatever they want, and some unstructured time, where they can play with any of the toys in the classroom. Some are learning-oriented, but others are just for fun, like large Lego blocks, stuffed animals, and such. The first time John was presented with watercolor paints and a blank piece of paper, he did nothing. The teacher initially thought it was nerves, as many kids are new to social settings. She also noticed he didn't play much with the other kids. She tried helping him join in their games, but he seemed uninterested. Then she told me about an incident where the class was given metallic crayons and black construction paper. John again did nothing. When she asked him what he'd like to draw, he said he didn't know. She gave him suggestions, like drawing his favorite cartoon character, a pet, or even a space alien, but he still said he didn't know what to draw. After a few more suggestions, John looked at her and said, "I don't know what skill I'm supposed to be learning." I nearly broke down. I can't believe I never pieced it together, but I guess I should have. My boys have no social skills, creativity, or imagination. They don't know that sometimes the purpose of fun is simply to have fun because they've never been allowed to experience that. I hate myself for not seeing it sooner. We're raising walking encyclopedias with no personality, no imagination, and no sense of fun. They know how to count, cook a simple meal, and understand that a washing machine cleans clothes, but they don't know how to relate to kids their own age. They don't understand how to make and learn from mistakes with friends, or that sometimes fun doesn't have to be educational. That night, I had a serious talk with my wife. I didn't let her call the teacher to set her straight. Instead, I told her that I'd made an appointment with a family therapist, and if she wanted to stay married, we were going to both family and couples counseling. No excuses. She needs to work on her parenting skills, and I need to be a more involved dad. I know I've been part of the problem. I grew up as an only child with fairly hands-off parents, and I haven't spent much time around kids or other parents as an adult. Just knowing what's wrong doesn't mean I automatically knew what was right. I also want to go to parenting classes eventually, but for now, we're starting with therapy. Karen loses it on me for shopping at a thrift store. I went thrift shopping this morning. My husband, who's 30, and I, 38, are expecting our first baby in a couple of months, so I've been getting stuff ready for the baby. I hate paying retail prices when I don't really know what he will need. I also hate being wasteful and the ecological impact, so I've been buying some of his onesies and the like from a not-for-profit thrift shop in my area. I've been thrifting since college, whether Poshmark or brick-and-mortar thrift shops, and I've never thought anything of it if the stuff was nice and well-priced. While shopping, I started chatting with another lady who was pregnant and shopping for her baby as well. We were laughing and having a good time enjoying our deals and excitement over our babies. We were going back and forth about the good deals we had found, like I got a very lightly used Pottery Barn crib online. She got a glider still in the box from a different thrift shop. We both finished and went to check out. As we were walking out, I was getting ready to invite her to coffee when she saw my car and she said in a really weird tone, "You drive a Tesla?" I wasn't really sure how to reply except, "Yeah, I really like it," and moved on. Her demeanor changed instantly, like I had done something truly horrendous. She read me the riot act about taking advantage of thrift stores and charity when I clearly don't need it, that I was robbing the poor, and asking me how dare I could do that. I had never seen it that way. I just thought of it as not being wasteful and supporting a good cause. I apologized for offending her and told her I did not see it the same way, but the conversation ended with her telling me to go forget myself and storming off. So, am I the jerk here? Is there a certain income level or point where it is unethical to buy secondhand? Ultimately, not the jerk, but I do see where this other woman is coming from. A lot of thrift shops have started raising prices because thrifting has become so popular, which kind of defeats the purpose. It also means that the shop no longer has those items for someone else who needs them, but genuinely may not be able to afford anything but thrift shop prices. Maybe try to keep more to Poshmark, eBay, etc. than the brick-and-mortar shops. 1000% agree with this as someone who survived on charity shops growing up. While it's good not to waste, just be mindful that poor people simply won't be able to get the things they need if they can't get them from charity stores, whereas you, OP, have the means to buy new if you can't find what you want. If my family couldn't get a couch or a mattress or dining table from the charity shop, we just didn't have one. Slept on air mattresses and sat on the floor. It could be good to leave those rare fine items and simply buy from ethical stores, eBay, whatever. If you have the Tesla, I'm guessing you make enough to be able to go to stores that are more expensive but are committed to sustainability. Also, anyone who thrifts just to sell on Depop or eBay is words this sub prohibits. I'm a former board member of a charity thrift store, and we desperately want you to shop with us. We use that money to support the charitable work we do. All customers are welcome. Not the jerk. She's clearly got some insecurities about finances though, and may have just been projecting them on you. While she was a tool, don't judge her too harshly yet, as you never know what's going on behind the scene. Anyway, you're all good. You're the jerk. Why y'all always trying to take from us? You know you got enough money to buy new clothes if you drive a Tesla. I don't blame her for going off on your behind. I would have done the same darn thing. You out here driving foreign cars while I'm having to have more babies just to get my check from the government to stay up with inflation. You just don't know what struggle is with yo rich, entitled, spoiled little self. I swear I'm tired of y'all coming at me with this BS, and you really want to act like you ain't know this was wrong? What you gonna do next? Go to the food pantry because it's the hip thing to do? Taking from folks who ain't got nothing. You ought to be ashamed of yourself, for real, jerk. P.S. That boy Elon Musk do look like an alien though. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for shopping at the thrift store or not? Please let us know. I used to go to Goodwill myself back in the day, but these days they're so expensive I find cheaper stuff at Walmart now. I knew my job, but the new manager thought he knew it better. So I used to work for one of the top delivery companies in the UK. There was a lot less competition 15 years ago. I was very good at my specific delivery job, and I often undertook every office task from single delivery routes to maintaining the office and delivery distribution to all routes. Then one day, in comes the new manager, and it was the cliche that you dread. You probably all have met the type. Suit slightly too big and a trainee mustache. He had just finished uni, and to his credit, he got himself a business degree. The problem with this company was every office around the whole country was run differently, and this poor manager was expecting every person to do things by the letter, but most of the work was done on goodwill since we were allowed to finish for the day when we had completed our deliveries. It was creating a rod for our own backs, to be honest, but it was nice to finish earlier on lighter days. Finally, on his third day, after watching me daily and asking me why I was doing things in certain orders, I told him my delivery route was complex and required it to be done in a certain order to ensure the time deliveries got there before 1 p.m. and the other delivery staff were fed their delivery materials by myself at certain times to ensure optimum delivery speeds and minimum delay. He replied, "No, it doesn't work like that." I simply stared for a bemused few seconds and said I don't understand. He wanted it by the letter today, as per company guidelines. I argued very hard against it and said he will really regret it because we won't complete, but he insisted I was wrong because it was all timed and measured. So after an exasperated 15-minute heated discussion, I did as I was told, to the letter. The 5 staff I fed deliveries to weren't happy but understood. It was like a domino effect of carnage. At 12:30 p.m., we all rang in the office to report the failed time deliveries, which he promptly freaked out about because they were strictly monitored. The subsequent enforced break times and shuffling required also left 15 to 20% of each walk unfinished, which he also now has to complete himself on top of the timed ones. He had to fill out reports for all failed 1 p.m. deliveries, all walk failures, and then had to call in managers from the other offices to finish it all. They all finished around 4 hours late. He was not popular. The next day he came to me and asked me to show him the mechanics of the delivery route in detail because I didn't expect that to happen if I'm honest. It was close enough to an apology for me. We actually became good friends over time, but he never questioned me when I said nope ever again. Am I the jerk for refusing to give someone her grandma's jewelry back? I, 26 female, bought a hoarder house back in May of 2018. It's a big 6-bedroom, 4.5 bathroom house. When I bought it, the contract stated that I take ownership of the house and everything in it. The lady who owned it had passed, and her heirs could not deal with the stench and literal mountains of junk and waste in it. You could only open the door not even 8 inches, and some rooms had junk filling them wall to wall and floor to ceiling. Well, it took me these last 4 years to finish cleaning, fixing, and updating it. While doing the cleaning, I made sure to check everything before throwing it out. Ended with more than $20,000 worth of money, some nice jewelry and antique furniture, and finally, a stunning 40s style lace-covered wedding dress. This woman took care of that dress until she couldn't anymore, and it took just some minor work to restore it. I currently don't have a partner, but I decided that it would be the dress I will be wearing if I ever get married. While doing the cleaning, I reached to the heirs to pass on some pictures and mementos, Christmas ornaments, artwork, and because of that, I had one of them, who's in her 30s, on my Facebook friends list. After repairing the dress, I put it on with the jewelry and posted a pic on Facebook. Well, this woman saw it and asked for the dress and heirlooms back. I refused to give them back, and legally they can't do anything. Also, if they meant that much to them, they should have cleaned the house on their own, not sell it to me. Now she and all her family are calling me out on social media. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Recovering hoarder here. Legally, you are in the right. Morally, you're also in the right. And though I cannot speak for the woman whose things you now own, I can give you insight into how I would feel if I passed before I could find homes for my treasures. I would want someone who cared enough to restore and respect the items to have them. You saw the beauty in them, as did she. You didn't just chuck it all in a dumpster. Take them, wear them, be happy to honor the original owner. Her family did not view these things as anything but a hassle. Not the jerk. It's a lot to clean a hoarder's house. They could have hired a service if they were mentally unable to do it, but instead they dumped it on someone else who paid them to take the house and all that's in it. If they cared about the items, they should have offered you money or asked you to keep an eye out. It's yours. You did the work. I don't care how cheap you got the house. It probably doesn't even out, like someone said, because hoarding houses are disasters. Simply put, and it takes a lot of time to clean and restore them. Not the jerk. You bought it, and then, more importantly, you did a ton of work to save and restore these things. Honestly, if I were the grandma, I'd rather have my stuff go to a random stranger who gave a hoot than anyone else. Also, on that note, I'm gonna call out everyone in the comments, fortunately not that many, who say that this dress is more important to the family member. No, it's not that important to the family. Their convenience was more important. Now that all of the hard work is done, suddenly it all means so much more to them. That's ridiculous. My grandmother was a hoarder, and my family spent months cleaning out her house after she passed. We did that because our family heirlooms and history meant something to us. It wasn't easy. It was costly and time-consuming and miserable and really important. You don't get to come back later, after all the work is done, and decide you're suddenly entitled to the fruit of someone else's work. I'm going to have to go with "you're the jerk." While you may legally own those items, and they could have looked through the house themselves, once you've opened up communication with the family and friended them on Facebook, flaunting their grandma's stuff, and expensive stuff at that, is like rubbing their loss of heirlooms in their faces. There are many reasons people sell homes as is. People on this subreddit seem to think it's just because they didn't care enough to look through it themselves. But more than likely other factors, like mental health, grief, managing debt after a loss, were all huge factors. Maybe they made a difficult decision and sold the house to pay for a funeral. Who knows? It doesn't mean that what's in the house isn't still significant. OP clearly said that the dress looked like it had been taken care of, probably more than other things in the home, which means that this lady probably wanted to pass on her wedding dress. Flaunting that and her valuable possessions in front of the family through Facebook is thoughtless behavior. To echo what others have said, what is legal and moral are two different things. Well, what do you think? Should OP give back the dress or the heirlooms or not? Please let us know.
I don't know. I mean, I'd give them back. I wouldn't feel like I have to, but I would just do it to, be nice, I guess.
The police have been called on me. So I just had a hotel guest call the cops on me. Whomever does night audit and security is allowed to park their car on the edge inside the wide carport. People can still drive through it. This is a boon for us because we like to keep an eye out on our cars during these hours. Years earlier, I had somebody mess with my car twice when I parked further away while doing 3 to 11 p.m. Anywho, every now and then the carport will have a guest temporarily park in my spot behind security while they check in. No big deal. I can temporarily park in the loading bay until it clears out, about 50 feet away. However, soon after clocking in, an extremely angry lady came to the front desk and demanded a car be towed because it was in a handicap spot without a sticker. She showed a picture on her phone, and it was mine. I explained to her that it was my car, probably a mistake, but it was not a handicap spot. I told her it was a loading bay typically used for deliveries, like food trucks. The area it's at is next to the handicap spots, but there's not a handicap sign. It's about 3 times the space of a regular parking spot, and it has vertical lines in it from top to bottom. The lady responded,
"Well, it's not any kind of parking spot."
I agreed, and then asked her if she can acknowledge that, then why was she treating it like a parking spot? She didn't give an answer, and we repeated this cycle of conversation. She kept making exaggerated facial expressions that came across as condescending and snooty, as if she didn't believe me, the guy working behind the desk at the property. She walked towards the front door, loudly saying she was going to tell her husband. I called after her, "Please do." As she was exiting, I heard her yell out to somebody,
"You're going to flip your lid," the guy said.
By the way, the husband never came inside or called me. I saw another person on the camera, but it was dark and they quickly walked off to Building C. We have 4 buildings. About 5 minutes later, my security person asked me why the police were here. I got a sense of dread and thought, she better not have called the cops. Yes, she did. The police officer said they got a call from a person not wanting to identify themselves about this situation. He was parked on the edge of the carport and said, "There's not even a handicap sign there." We talked about it and kind of found the whole situation funny. The cop was able to tell I was not in a parking spot, handicap or otherwise, from 50 feet away in the dark. He waved it off and said don't worry about it, and even if there was a real case, it's up to the property to have a car towed or removed, not the police. The fact that she didn't want to give her identity makes me think she knew she was in the wrong. Don't mess with the trash man. Back in the late 90s, I worked for my brother who owned a small private trash hauling company. So small that I was the only employee and he had just 2 rear-load trash trucks. On this day, we were running together on one of the trucks, him as the driver and me as the helper. We had placed a 4 cubic yard dumpster for a homeowner who was using it for a garbage cleanout. After emptying the dumpster once or twice, the homeowner stopped paying his trash removal bill. After repeated attempts to contact the homeowner with no response, we decided it was time to get the dumpster back for use by someone who would pay for their service. When we got to the home, the dumpster was sitting right in front of the garage, with about 30 feet from the street to the garage. Of course, the dumpster was overloaded with all the remaining rubbish from the homeowner's cleanout. My brother backed up to the dumpster, parked the truck, and we jumped out. We knocked on the doors to the house to see if anyone was home who we could talk to, or if there was a payment taped to the door, but no one answered and there was no payment. With no response, we proceeded to empty the dumpster into our truck. Most times we were considerate and picked up the trash that fell onto the ground while emptying a dumpster, but today we let it fall without the slightest concern. It took less than 5 minutes to load the truck with the contents of the dumpster. Once the dumpster was empty, my brother jumped into the truck and we left with the dumpster, with me riding in the back of the truck. However, as we pulled out of the driveway, I was unlatching a turnbuckle that kept the truck's tailgate mounted firmly to the truck's body. Once on the street, my brother stopped so I could drop the dumpster to the ground. As he reversed the truck into the homeowner's driveway, I was unlatching the turnbuckle on the other side of the truck. As soon as the truck came to a stop in front of the garage where the dumpster once stood, I was already at the outside controls of the truck, pulling the handle to raise the tailgate. In one swift motion, I then pulled the other handle, the one that pushed the blade inside the trash truck to the rear, ejecting the trash that once was in the dumpster back onto the homeowner's driveway. See, when we had come for the dumpster, we had just come from the landfill, so the truck had been empty. All the trash in the truck had come from the homeowner's dumpster. We unloaded the truck in about 15 seconds. As we pulled out of the driveway, I jogged alongside the truck, simultaneously pushing both handles to retract the blade and lower the tailgate. I quickly latched the turnbuckles and reattached the dumpster to the truck. After I jumped back into the truck, we drove off, but we noticed movement behind us. A couple teens who had been inside the house had jumped into a car and were giving chase to us. We paid them no mind. When we got back to the shop, the teens confronted my brother about the mess we had left in their driveway. After asking if they were the homeowner and hearing that they were the homeowner's kids, my brother told them he was not talking to them. He told them to have the homeowner contact our lawyer. Since they were trespassing, we shooed them off our property. The bill went to collections with an unknown resolution, but we got our dumpster back. They never even came to say hi. So this was about 9 years ago. I had just gotten medically retired from the Army, and my wife and I found our current home. The original portion of the home was built in 1900, and it had been improved and expanded upon the following century. Best parts, near middle of the city, though on the poor side of the tracks. No HOA, and still had 1.6 acres attached. Bad part, near a government-subsidized housing project, but also within a block of the county police garage, so figured not an issue. Almost immediately, we encountered people walking their dogs through our yard like it was some kind of unfenced dog park. When I would try greeting them, they would just turn away and ignore me. So after a couple weeks, I just started calling over that since they don't even want to say hi, they should know it's private property, that they're trespassing, and that I will call the police. When that did not appear to work, I started taking video of myself doing so and did call the police. When they denied ever being told, I could then show the police multiple videos with date stamps. That seemed to make things die down for about a month, until one morning, my wife went out our back door with her Pomeranian to be met by one of said neighbors with his pit bull, just waiting by our back door that instantly started snapping and growling at her. He immediately left before I could get a video or the cops could arrive. We love pit bulls, by the way. A couple days later, several youngsters rode over on motorbikes while we were gone and turned the grass on the far side of our property into a torn-up dirt bike track. I had put up a game camera. Enough was enough. I contacted several contractors for bids and contracted for a 6-foot wood privacy fence all the way around. Construction started up and was done in 2 days. The first morning after it was up, I got a banging on our front door and answered it to find a couple with their doggo on a leash. As soon as I opened the door, neighbors, "We had an agreement with the previous owners and you've blocked us from our dog park." Me, "Well, good morning to you too." Neighbor, "Are you listening to me? We had an agreement and you violated it." Me, "Not with me, and you all have been so rude. You can go buzz off with jackhammers." Neighbor, looking a bit shocked, "Look,
You need to open the gates right now.
Me. What was his name?
Whose name?
The previous owner. Neighbor doesn't say anything. Me.
Look, jerk, I tried being nice. I tried talking.
Neighbor.
Now look.
Me, in booming former drill command voice.
Shut your mouth, you waste of air.
Deer in headlight stares.
I tried being nice. My wife tried being nice. No one cared to even say hi, even when on our property, much less a, hi, welcome to the neighborhood. You couldn't name the previous owner, and you've acted like a total jerk. So stay off my land, or I'll have you arrested for trespassing. It's private property, and while we could have worked something out, you were jerks. So buzz off and tell the others to do likewise, or I'll have them arrested too.
And I slammed the door in their faces. I made sure to post no trespassing and video surveillance signs as well as keeping the gates locked. We've had a few problems over the years, but they've been few and scattered. We've made friends with a few folks in the neighborhood, including a nice older couple who bring their 2 dogs over to play with our Pomeranians from time to time and love watching our daughter run around laughing with the whole little pack of doggos. There's also James, who is struggling with being a single father to 3 girls. He'll bring over the girls and his lab and hurl a football across the entire yard for his lab and my big mutt to chase while we chill with a couple cold ones. There have been some minor issues, but as a whole, nothing like what we went through the first 3 to 4 months. Though someone does keep raiding our gardens and fruit trees. I've got them on camera, but have yet to be able to identify them. Otherwise, I keep my eyes open. Am I the jerk for telling my brother that he is at fault for his marriage failing? This week, my parents and my brother took me out for my birthday. My brother was a bit down because his divorce was finalized earlier this summer. He's living with my mom and dad temporarily because he was no longer eligible to live in military housing once the divorce was final. I've never been married, so I don't understand, but I try to be supportive. Doing things like taking him out so he isn't just sitting in the house all day while my parents are at work or proofreading his resume. I do understand that he's going through some stuff, but he spent the entire night complaining, and no matter what anyone said or did, he was negative. I tried to ignore it, but when he made a comment about our waitress while we were walking back to the car, simply because she was wearing an engagement ring, I snapped. The waitress didn't mention marriage at all, and her service was fine. My brother said she probably lied to her boyfriend to get him to agree to marry her. I snapped and told my brother that his wife didn't lie, and his marriage failing was his fault. My brother met my ex-sister-in-law when she had just finished her medical residency and newly in the military. They met in 2008 and got married in 2010. From the start, she told my brother she never wanted kids. She was open about being childless by choice to everyone. He dated her and married her. This whole time, he thought she would change her mind, and after all this time, he got mad at her when she got mad at him for pressuring her to have kids. I didn't marry her, and I knew she was childless by choice. It wasn't a secret. She divorced him because he wouldn't stop pressuring her to have kids and get her tubes untied. He went so far as to try and change the divorce ground from no fault to fraud, claiming she entered the marriage under false pretenses. That didn't go anywhere. He maintains she lied, and he is also mad he wasted so much time with her. Before I snapped at him, I never said anything. His divorce was none of my business, and I only tried to be a supportive brother. But his comment about the waitress pushed me over the edge. He wants me to say sorry to him, but I'm not sorry. I've listened to him complain for months since she filed for divorce, and it's only gotten worse since he moved back here. I've tried to be supportive and helpful as much as I can. Was I the jerk for snapping at him? He's still upset about it. Not the jerk, but also you're probably not going to get him to see reason. The literal years of him expecting his ex to change her mind should tell you that he's someone who crafts the narrative he wants when confronted with someone telling him something he doesn't want to hear. Not the jerk. He made his bed. The fraud was all in his own mind, assuming his ex would change her mind just because he was so wonderful and it would be a crime against humanity not to replicate his genes in some form. What a jerk. She's better off without him, and so too would you be. I am allergic. Now, I'm aware you can be allergic to beef, nuts, sesame seeds, etc., and all those 10 delivery orders daily stating they're all allergic to tomato. But after all these years working in a restaurant, I've realized one thing. A lot of people lie about allergies only to make sure they accidentally don't get tomatoes in their burger
because they really hate tomatoes. The walk-in people, for instance, who are truly allergic, have a different type of demeanor when they ask about something they're allergic to, and I gladly make sure to help them out because we don't want to get sued. I mean, because we want to give them a pleasant experience. For instance, today when a moron came in with his girlfriend and wanted to order something. Moron: I want that lamb dish. Me: you mean the lamb beef, as it's clearly stated in the menu? Jerk: no, lamb only, no beef. Me: it's already mixed. You can't have just the lamb. It's not chunks mixed in together. It's literally grounded together, so you couldn't separate it if you wanted to. And the worst part is, he was looking at the meat as he was ordering it. Jerk: I'm allergic to beef. I only want the lamb. Me: well then, you can't eat that dish since it's mixed together. His girlfriend, clearly irritated with him: we'll have that dish, thank you. They ordered only that since it's a big plate. Me: okay, so you're not allergic then? Silence. Edit: forgot to add, me and the chef were talking about it, and the chef whispered to me that we didn't get lamb with the delivery, so it's actually made of only beef, and not even lamb beef. This never happens normally, only on the one day he walked in. Ex's divorce lawyer: send 3 years of complete financials or else. Me: as you wish. This happened several years ago when my ex and I were going through a heated divorce and custody battle. While we were married, we had a couple of conversations about how rich people hide their assets to avoid paying taxes. I've never had enough assets to do this, but she somehow got the idea that I was and told her attorney that I was laundering money and hiding income. It was more likely the heat of the moment as a divorce custody battle often comes down to. I couldn't even afford my own attorney, so I represented myself. Her lawyer wasn't a total jerk, but he clearly was out to get me, and he talked down to me like I didn't deserve to breathe the same air. One day, I get a letter in the mail from him requesting an updated income declarations form and 3 years of financials. It had a long list of things to include. I own a communications tech company that was in super startup phase back then. Money was already tight. I was trying to get this business off the ground with no financing. I was finishing my MBA with scholarships and loans, so paying for copies and postage or driving this 30 miles to his office meant eating peanut butter and saltines for a week. So I called him to explain my situation. He all but called me a liar and didn't believe I couldn't afford it. I was put off by that, and I said this was taking time away from business I needed to handle. To which he replied, and I'll never forget this: well, according to your income declarations, you're not that busy. What do you do all day? He then said if I didn't get these documents, he would consider my previous filings as fraudulent, tell the judge, contact the DA, and also alert the state tax agency and IRS. Probably an empty threat, but I'm no lawyer. eFax is one of the services my company provides, and at this time it was relatively unknown. So I asked him if he has a fax machine. He said he had a fax, scanner, and a copier device, then said what law office doesn't have a fax machine, and I suddenly got an idea. Okay, I said to him, I'll put together and fax whatever I can. Okay, jerk. You want 3 years of financials? You got it. I scanned to PDF every receipt I could find. McDonald's receipt from 5 years ago? Oh well, won't hurt to include it. CVS receipt. It's 3 miles long, perfect. They got the $1 off toothpaste coupons too. I downloaded every bank statement, credit card statement, purchase orders from vendors, and every invoice I sent to clients. I printed to PDF the entire 3-year accounting journal, monthly, quarterly, annual balance sheets, cash flow statements, P&Ls. Not only did I PDF 3 years of tax filings, but every single letter I received from the IRS and state tax agency, including the inserts advising me of my rights. It took a while, but I was a few days ahead of the deadline. I made a cover page, black background with white lettering. Wherever I could, I included separator pages in all caps and the biggest, boldest font that would fit on the page in landscape. Receipts, taxes, etc. I merged everything into a single 150-plus page compressed PDF and sent the document using my eFax system. Every hour or so, I received a status email saying the fax failed. Huh? That's weird. Well, they're getting this document. So I changed the system configuration to unlimited retries after failures to keep redialing until it went through. Weird. I was still getting status email failures. I'll delete the failure emails and keep the success one after it eventually goes through, I thought.
Problem solved. 2 days later, a lady from his office called and asked me to stop sending the fax. Their fax, scanner, printer, and copier had been printing non-stop. It kept getting paper jams, kept running out of ink, and they had to keep shutting it off and back on to print. I explained that her boss told me to send this by the deadline or else he would call the DA and IRS. Since I didn't want to call from the DA or the IRS, I would keep sending until I got a success confirmation. I suggested they just not print until my fax completes, but she didn't like that. She asked me to email the documents, and I told a little white lie that my email wouldn't allow an attachment that big, unless her boss in writing agreed to cancel the request or agreed to reimburse me for my costs to print and ship. I said I would continue to fax until they confirmed they have received every page. She put me on hold, and the attorney gets on the line. He said, forget sending the financials. I said that I would need this in writing, so I will keep sending the fax until he sent that to me. He asked me to stop faxing and he would send it in writing, and I said, send it in writing first and then I'll stop. Long moment of silence. Click. About 20 minutes later, I received an email from his assistant with an attached, signed letter in PDF that I no longer needed to provide financials. The letter then threatened to pursue sanctions in court or sue me for interfering with their business. Every time I saw him after that, the lawyer never brought up sanctions, lawsuits, criminal referrals, or financials again. My Karen stepmom demands I give up my room for her daughter. So I, 16 female, live with my dad since he and my mom split up, and just recently he got married to Kelly. Kelly has a daughter who's 13 and a son who's 9, and they just moved in with us. My dad and I's house has 4 rooms. The master bedroom has a master bathroom inside of it, and my room is just a little bit smaller, but it also has a bathroom in the room too. Then there are the other 2 rooms that don't have a bathroom but have walk-in closets, unlike mine. All of the rooms have beds and dressers, all the stuff that makes a room, without the personal decorations that you choose. When they came to move in, her daughter ran straight past one of the vacant rooms and into mine. My walls are purple, and I have Marvel and DC posters hanging up on the wall. I also have a mirror attached to my dresser with lights around it. So once I showed her son to the room he would be sleeping in, I went into my room and saw her bringing her stuff into my room. And so I told her that this isn't her room and that she has to have one of the rooms with no decorations. She immediately starts flipping out. She started yelling, saying she was gonna tell her mom and my dad that I'm being mean to her and trying to bully her because she was younger. Her mom and my dad came into the room due to all the yelling and asked what was going on. And so I told them that she thinks my room is hers and she won't leave. But she said that this has to be her room because it's her favorite color, purple, and it has a bathroom, so it has to be hers. My dad explained to her that she can get her room painted whatever color she wants, and we can get her the posters and pictures she wants also. But she said she doesn't want a room that doesn't have a bathroom, so this one should be hers. Her mom ended up agreeing with her, saying that I've had this room for a very long time and I can just restart in the other room and I should give it to her since she's younger. So I told her that I won't give up my room because this has all of my stuff in it and I'm comfortable in my room, so her daughter will have to go to the other only available room. She's saying that I'm being rude and mean to my new little sister and I should be reasonable and give her my room and be the bigger person and act my age and not like a little kid. So, am I the jerk? Edit. I see a lot of people are asking how my dad feels and what's his opinion on this, and he said that I can choose to do whatever because it's my room and I'm old enough to talk for myself. Not the jerk. She's 13, not 3. It's your room. It was your room before your dad married, and it should be your room until you move out. Don't budge on this. Make sure your dad keeps supporting you. Good luck. If no ages were mentioned, I could have very well thought that she was 3. If she's this entitled from the very beginning, I can't imagine how terrible it would be to live with her long term. I really feel bad for OP. 1000% not the jerk. Now that you mention living with her long term, OP needs to get a lock and keep the door locked whenever she's not in there, or stepbrat may end up in there stealing her stuff or breaking her things. Not the jerk. You shouldn't have to start over in a new room. Plus, in my experience, the eldest kids get to pick their rooms and then down to the youngest. This is because when the old kids move out, the younger ones can then have their rooms. Your stepmom is being stupid and setting a precedent that won't end well. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her stepmom? Please let us know.
I'm really disappointed Dad isn't stepping in here and going off on them. You don't just come into someone's house and demand to take their room.
My boyfriend dumps me for sending him a photo of me at the hospital. I, 20 female, was recently admitted into a hospital for a night due to a serious but not life-threatening illness. I was completely out of it for several days with horrible pain before my roommate convinced me to get medical help. She took off work to stay with me in the hospital, and I cannot express how much her support has helped as my own family lives too far away. Now, I've been dating Sam, who's 19, for about 9 months. He knew I was sick, and so I texted him when I was first going into the hospital to update him. Since he was working, he didn't read the message until much later. I sent him around 6 text messages updating him with what the nurses were saying and including a photo of me on IV giving a thumbs up. It was my first time ever in the hospital, and I just wanted to keep the bad situation as lighthearted as possible. He responded a few hours later with a thumbs up, and that was all. I asked if everything was all right, and he said, "Yeah, just you being in the hospital is giving me a lot of anxiety. I'd rather not see you looking like that." I told him that was okay and didn't message him for the rest of the night, not thinking much of it. The next afternoon, his mom called me asking if I was okay. She had the impression that I sent him the hospital photo after he told me not to share any information and was disrespecting his request. She reminded me that his grandfather only passed a year earlier, where Sam had to spend a lot of time in and out of the hospital, so the updates were making him grieve all over again. I apologized to her and sent him a text saying that I didn't mean to hurt his feelings. He left me on red. My roommate thinks that I didn't do anything wrong at all, and he's being too sensitive and immature for involving his mom. Personally, I think this is a bit unfair, as he was really close with his grandfather and struggles with anxiety. I really feel guilty now, as I know how mental health can be, and I never want him to suffer. Am I the jerk? Update. This morning I woke up to a text from Sam asking for a break. He told me he needed to focus on himself and that there's too much drama in this relationship. I agree. I've been with Sam through all of his anxiety attacks, holding him, crying in my arms more times than I can count. He has never done the same for me. I've made excuses over and over again for this behavior. I've begged him to go to therapy and he's always refused. This hospital stay and your comments have been eye-opening. Oh, and for his mom? She reminded me to let go of my feeling and do what's best for me. I'm starting up therapy because I'll be needing the support when you're gone. I actually laughed out loud at that one. She hasn't reached out to me yet, and I hope she never does. My roommate and I are figuring out how to end things once and for all. So yeah, that's it for now. Feeling a lot of emotions, but I know it's for the best. Also, thank you so much to the lovely Redditors who have given me advice and wished me well. I'm doing much better, and I appreciate it a ton. It's like lobsters. You've just measured him, he's not grown enough. Put him back in the sea. I had one boyfriend, he was 26 at the time, who visited me once when I was in the hospital for a week. We'd been together for 2 years and were living together. We didn't last. My next boyfriend was 21 when I was hospitalized. I was in between their ages, on our first anniversary of meeting. He was in the hospital with me holding the cardboard chuck-up trays and visited every day. Both had difficult shift patterns. I'm still with number 2 now, 19 years later. You're not the jerk unless you break fishing law and don't return the baby lobster to the sea. Not the jerk. His mom called you to say how disrespectful you are while you're recovering in the hospital? That's a new one. You would have had to be told to not share pictures or any more messages or pics before not considering his feelings. Life is tough and you were reaching out for support. Not the jerk. And please leave your boyfriend and his mother. He's more concerned about his feelings than about how you're doing. He didn't even ask how you were or hope you felt better or anything. That's wrong. I want to write something else, very rude here. You're in a hospital bed for the first time ever, in pain, and you shouldn't be the one worrying about him suffering. Rethink your priorities and what you want in a boyfriend. Not the jerk. This guy isn't ready to be an adult, let alone in a relationship. You were in the hospital, and rather than expressing concern, he talked about his own anxiety. And then he sent his mommy after you. Run. Red flags. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her boyfriend and his mom? Please let us know.
He sounds like even more of a mummy's boy than you, Reddit boy.
Am I the jerk for mentioning my best friend's former crush on me at his wedding? Okay, I'm currently in a predicament, and frankly, I could really use some opinions. For backstory, I, female 27, met one of my best friends, Christian, male 26, back in 2010 during our freshman year of high school. We became friends and remained close over the years since, making a lot of great memories and sharing mutual close friends. From 2013 to 2016, Christian had pretty serious unrequited feelings for me. However, he eventually got over me, and I had never even let his feelings harm our friendship. If anything, our friendship honestly got closer after he got over me. In early 2018, Christian met Victoria, female 29, at a bar, and they hit it off. They started dating after 2 weeks, got engaged in late 2021, and the wedding happened yesterday night. It was honestly a great time as I watched with my parents and mutual friends as the kid I've known for 12 years was getting married to the love of his life. Plus, Victoria and I honestly had a pretty decent relationship, and according to Christian, she didn't really seem to care about his past feelings as time went on. Anyway, as the night kept going with a lot of music and dancing, I got up to eventually give a speech for Christian. I talked about how we first met, how much our lives changed since then, and just how great of a person Christian was. The attendees were clearly touched, and Christian and Victoria both looked happy. As I talked more about our history, I jokingly mentioned how Christian had the hots for me, but that didn't matter because he found his soulmate and that our friendship was stronger than some unrequited feelings. Most of the crowd laughed, and I could even see Christian smiling for a second before seeing Victoria's confused face. After the speech was over, I went over to the bar with a few friends. Christian came up and hugged me, thanking me for the speech. However, at our hotel, one of my other best friends, Devin, female 27, told me she had heard gossip from the bridesmaids that Victoria was really upset with me for bringing up Christian's previous feelings for me at the wedding. Apparently, Victoria genuinely had no issue with Christian's feelings, but felt it was inappropriate to mention them at a wedding. I sincerely intended no harm with my actions. Maybe I didn't read the room. Everyone I've told is honestly split on whether I'm the bad guy or not, so it's definitely been polarizing. Christian hasn't mentioned any of this to me, and I'm not sure I should ask him. Am I the jerk? Edit. To those of you asking about whether the speech was planned or impromptu, I had asked Christian's parents beforehand if I could give a speech, and they were more than happy with it. People have to stop with the assumptions that this has anything to do with me having feelings, though. Yeah, saying that in my speech was probably an idiot move, but my sincere intention was to tell everyone about our 12 years of friendship and some of its history, and like I said, people were touched up until my fateful joke. Oh, you pulled the "he was into me first" card. He was in love with me, but I turned him down, and so now he's into you. Yeah, you're the jerk. How tasteless. I agree. This screams, I should always be the center of attention, intended or not. Also, your crush was such an ego boost that I still revel in it 6 years after it ended. This is what it was all about. OP can deny it all she wants, but this was not about celebrating years of friendship with her friend, but about stroking her own ego one last time. You'll be forever known as the groom's female friend who said, "He was into me first" during a speech at the wedding. There's a time and a place for jokes like that, but a speech at a wedding reception isn't one of them. You're the jerk. Exactly. OP for sure owes the couple an apology, but frankly, the person she humiliated here is herself. All the guests at this wedding will be dining off this story for years to come. The time I went to a wedding and a drunk friend of the groom tried to imply he was her sloppy seconds to the bride is a pretty killer anecdote, likely to elicit many horrified reactions and follow-up questions from its audience. You're the jerk. You don't bring that stuff up at a wedding, joking or not. This speech was supposed to be about Christian and Victoria, not about Christian's past feelings for you. Imagine how uncomfortable you made Victoria feel. I also bet the crowd laughed out of more discomfort for the situation. You need to apologize to the bride and groom. I understand you didn't mean that comment maliciously at all. It was just wildly inappropriate considering the time and place. Not the jerk. This is what the dude gets for sticking around as that guy friend for so long. I know most of you will think I'm crazy for saying this, but I need to speak the truth right quick. Me being a young woman who always keeps it 100. All guy friends are only sticking around because they want to hook up with you. It took years for this to finally click in my head, but once it made sense, everything just clicked. Don't believe me? Text one of your guy friends right now and ask if they want to hook up with you tonight. They will jump at the opportunity because that's the only reason they're into you. Guy friends who we don't hook up with are just emotional sponges and used as an ego boost for our self-esteem. I'm speaking facts right now that y'all will hate me for, but I've talked to many of my homegirls about this, and in private, they will admit that this is 100% true. But of course, in public, they want to act like dude friends are legit interested in them for who they are. It's crazy how we all gotta act fake in real life and deny the truth. Downvote me all you want. I'm in reality keeping it 100, while you over here denying straight facts. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for what she said in her speech or not? Please let us know.
This never would have happened if OP would have just kept it 100. Skirt, skirt.
Well, I guess in a way she was kind of keeping it 100. It's not like she was lying, right?
You know what I mean, Reddit boy.
You would have to take that up with the board of directors. There's a huge nationwide electronics retailer in the UK called Currys. They are renowned for having terrible customer service, but very occasionally having decent prices. I was in the market for a KitchenAid stand mixer, and my employer had an arrangement where I could buy Currys gift cards for a 10% discount. I was a bit reluctant to use them based on past experiences, but thought I would take advantage of saving a bit of cash and ordered my mixer online. Delivery due in a week. Easy peasy, I thought. It was about £250 or $300 before discount. Delivery date comes and goes. No mixer. The next day, I ring up customer service and ask what happened. After 20 minutes on hold, they tell me the product is out of stock and I will need to wait for their next delivery in 10 days' time. Not too bad. I'm a patient person. 10 days later, still no mixer or order update, even though it's showing as in stock and available to buy on their website. Back on the phone to customer service. More time on hold. This time I'm told there is an order backlog and they couldn't tell me when it would be delivered, so I ask for a refund. Unfortunately, in the UK, if you pay by gift card, you can only get refund by gift card. At this point, I had no desire to ever use Currys again and was disappointed in myself for ever giving it a go. I would have no use for a gift card, so I decided to give them a bit more time. No prizes for guessing that this didn't bear fruit. A couple of weeks later, I used the customer service online chat to see what's going on. Again, they are completely unable to help or confirm when or if I would receive my order. I asked what I was expected to do, and the bloke said something along the lines of, "No idea, mate. You would have to take it up with our board." Ha ha ha. Fine. It's malicious compliance time. A quick trip to the company's house website gives me a list of all of their directors. Another hour on LinkedIn, and I've tracked them all down. I proceed to send every director a summary of what has happened and links to screenshots of the online chat I had with the CS rep. Less than a day later, I get a call from the CEO's personal assistant apologizing profusely and personally guaranteeing me that she will sort it out. By the time this all happened, the mixer had gone down by another 60 pounds, so she processed my order again and said she would arrange for the accounts team to send me a voucher for the difference. She was genuinely the hero of the story. The very next day, my mixer arrives. Happy days. A few days after that, I get a letter with a Currys voucher. I thought this would be the end of my sorry saga. However, as icing on the cake, they proceeded to send me 3 more 60-pound vouchers at random intervals over the next few months. I can only guess that their admin team is as useless as the customer service team. For completeness, I spent the vouchers on a new oven, which unsurprisingly turned up late and faulty and had to be replaced.
Some of these stores will do you so wrong. I like to find one good one I can count on and just use them for everything.
Threaten my job? Thank you, I will. I posted this elsewhere, but I feel it also fits right in here too. A bit of background. This happened in the UK in about 91 or 92, and I'm female. At the time, I was about 20 or 21. In the early 90s, I'd just come back from working overseas, and as it was December, I needed a job quickly, so I took one at a Turkish restaurant. Relevant later. It was a waitress job, and I truly loved the job. The one other waiter was nice. The 3 chefs were great and taught me a few tips and recipes I still use to this day. The management, husband and wife, seemed okay at first, but typically didn't want to have to do anything except mingle and drink wine during service hours, never once helping, but always quick with blame. A typical night. Myself and the other waiter worked our backsides to the bone,
and they'd just sit, watch, and pester the customers. I didn't see a single tip when I worked in this restaurant, but it's UK, so not compulsory anyway, so I didn't think anything of it at the time. We worked through Christmas and the New Year's Eve shift was approaching, so the manager asked me to purchase some cloth napkins from a store on the other side of town, which I did. I bought them, took them into the restaurant, and I didn't notice until afterwards I was shortchanged in my reimbursement for purchasing them. I had to use my own money. One of the managers said she had had a great idea and she'd like me and the other waiter to wear something in lines of traditional Turkish costume that evening for the booked solid New Year's Eve shift, a shift I was due to start in a few hours. This was the first time she had mentioned anything about this idea of hers. I mentioned it could be possible, but I'd like to see what she had planned. She produced a cardboard box and showed me the first stunning outfit she had chosen for the waiter, my colleague. I said it looked amazing and questioned what she had chosen for me. Bear in mind I was very slim, about a size 6 to 8, UK, and about 5'10". She produced this see-through outfit that definitely didn't look like something I should be wearing at work. I asked her if she was serious. She said, yes, to which I said, I'm not wearing that. She then told me that I'm wearing it or I'm fired. So I replied with a simple, bye then, and reached for my things. She retracted immediately in a panic, saying, no, I didn't mean that. I need you to stay. I smiled and walked out. A few days later, I popped in for my final wages, cash envelope and tax documentation, and the other waiter was there at that time. He said that I'd really left them in a bad spot that night for doing that. I apologized to him, very genuine, to which he smiled broadly and said nothing to be sorry for. The management had to help that night, and he even saw some tips. The management were grumpy when they came out to see me and very grudgingly gave me my final wages. I can't remember if they gave me my tax document or not though. The other waiter's reaction to telling me what happened that night still makes me smile to this day. Am I the jerk for removing all the home improvements I made to my room and my parents' house after they announced that I would have to move? I, 25 female, lived with my parents, 50 female and 55 male, because it's very close to my service and it's a very expensive area. I can currently live alone, but I didn't because I never needed to and my parents didn't ask. As time went on and I earned more, I put in air conditioning, made my room smart, as well as the house with Alexa, put a very good shower in the guest bathroom, which I eventually added to my bedroom. I bought quality furniture to my room, etc. My room turned out to be the best in the house because of the changes I made. And yes, I paid rent to my parents. Quite a bit, by the way. It's been 3 months since they came to talk to me, saying it was time for me to change because they wanted to have their moment alone now, and I was able to live on my own. I agreed. After all, I was just living there for ease and convenience. I found a house, and I would need to make all the changes I planned. So in order to not have to buy things that I already have, I replaced all the sockets, bulbs, switches, the smart ones, and the shower with common ones. I paid for them all, and this increase in energy I paid too. I also removed the air conditioner and paid to plug the holes it left, along with all the furniture in my room and the Alexa scattered around the house. My parents started complaining that I shouldn't take everything out, as they were in common use. They were planning to move their room to mine, and they didn't want me to take out all the changes I had made to my room. I said that they asked me to move, and I'm taking everything I bought, because I needed to have other expenses. I made a payment on the house, and these items were all bought by me, and all the increase in energy I had was paid only by me too, and that if they wanted to buy them, I can help them search online, but I would take these items. They called me selfish because I made the house worse and removed the items in common use, as they were already used to the smart home. They complained even more when I didn't want to leave the 65-inch smart TV in my room as a gift for them. I didn't leave it because it's new and it was too expensive. I moved a week ago, but they're still upset. All items are brand new, less than a year old. Also, yes, it was cheaper for me to replace. Legally, I can do this. It's not in the US. These things are very expensive in my country. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. I don't understand why your parents would expect you to leave stuff that you bought for your convenience. As long as the hole from the AC unit is patched and painted, there should be no issue. This reminds me of the post some time ago of the tenant who turned a bare dirt backyard into a nice garden with plants, greenhouse, a garden shed, etc., and when asked to leave, took it all along, only for the landlords to freak out because the value of the house plummeted because of the backyard. Never gets old. Not the jerk. Your parents wanted to profit from the changes you made. Any chance you could have left it as was, or they had paid for new equipment? Sounds like my former flatmate who forced me to leave when I was only away for a few months because she wanted her friend to move in and expected me to leave all of my nice furniture for her at less than half the actual price. I packed and moved everything out across several states. Am I the jerk for saying I didn't sign up for the job of always being a babysitter? My dad met his wife when I was 10. She had 2 kids. Her daughter was 7 and her son was 5. Their dad walked out on them and they had not seen him since, where my mom passed when I was 8. My dad and his wife set me down when they were getting serious and told me her daughter would need me to look out for her because she's special needs and has Down syndrome. They told me I would be her big sister now, and it was important I be a good one because she would always have trouble. I told them I didn't want to be a big sister, and they said what I wanted wasn't important because it was happening, and she would need me more than he would. So ever since that little talk, it has been on my shoulders to make sure she's okay. Kids being mean? I need to help. She doesn't have anyone to hang out with her? I need to do it. I don't want to? I get a lecture. I resent it, I do. I don't resent her. I know it's not her fault, but I never wanted to do any of this stuff. I never signed up to be a babysitter, but especially now, that's what I am. If they want to go anywhere, I have to stay with my stepsister, and she's very attached to me. Like she's clingy and needy with me, and I know she loves me a lot. She's more attached to me than she is to her brother, or her mom for that matter. She will choose me over her mom in a lot of things. I'm even told to hold her hand when we're out if she doesn't want to hold her mom's hand. I hate all of it. I'm 17 now, and the end of my time here is drawing closer, and I plan to move out ASAP and not come back home for any weekends or any day visits. My dad's wife is aware of this too. She's heard me make plans, and she and my dad have started trying to convince me to stick around. Even worse, they've taken 3 of my weekends in the last 2 months and made me babysit her daughter for the entire weekends. They're trying to add pressure for me to not just dip from their lives because it would crush my stepsister. This past week, I had enough, and I lost it when it was just me and my dad and his wife at home. They were making plans for next weekend, and I told them I had never signed up for the job of always being a babysitter, and that if they thought I would feel guilty for leaving it all behind, then they were wrong, because I can't wait to leave, and I won't miss any of them when I'm gone. My dad started yelling at me and asking how could I be so cold, and I was a jerk for acting like being part of the family and being part of my little sister's life was a chore. Tension has been present ever since, and I see that my stepsister is really bothered by it. She started crying when she got home that day, and she's cried a lot more since, more than is normal for her. And I'm being blamed. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Kids are not autonomous responsibility modules. It doesn't matter if she loves you. It doesn't matter if they expect it. You deserve a life. You have a great deal to look forward to in your future, and being their auxiliary babysitter isn't it. Frankly, there's help for those who need a caretaker for handicapped individuals, and failing that, it is the parent's responsibility. Not yours, not a kid's, not anyone else's, theirs. They wanted some rose-colored love story, free from tedious responsibility. Forget that. Go live you. Go no contact, and forget them as soon as you can get out. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her dad and his wife? Please let us know. When will parents stop trying to make their kids be parents? How not to recruit a nurse. In nursing school, you have clinical days. The day before clinical, you have to go to the hospital and pick a patient you'll work with the next day. You also have a chance to work as a CNA while in school to gain more experience and make a little money because it's difficult to work full-time and go through nursing school. There were 2 hospitals in my small town. I worked at Hospital A in the ICU as a CNA. My clinicals were in the larger hospital, Hospital B. I worked a day shift at my hospital and ran over to the other one across town to pick my patient and get my pre-clinical work done. It was about 30 minutes after 7 when I got there. Most hospital shifts you work are 12 hours, 7 to 7. I knew I was going to be on a med-surg floor, so I got on the elevator to ride up and looked through my paperwork to find out what unit I'd be at the next day. A lady in a pantsuit with a hospital badge was already on the elevator and gave me a look like I had peed in her Cheerios. Okay, I just moved to the side and finally found my paper letting me know what floor and unit I needed to go to. In a really ugly tone, the pantsuit asked, "Where are you headed?" Me, staying polite, "I'm headed to 3N. She slammed the button and just said, "Thank you." As we were riding, she turned to me and started chewing me out. "It's not appropriate for you to be coming in 20 minutes after shift change. We've been understaffed all day, and those units are slammed right now." I just kind of stared at her for a second and thought, I'm not going to be disturbing the nurses, and if I have to wait on a chart, that's fine. I don't intend on interrupting report, but I just said, okay. If anything, her face got angrier. My floor arrived and she stepped out with me and kept pace with me as I headed to the nurse's station. I went to the side and took a look at the assignment board to see if anyone had a diagnosis I hadn't worked with before, then sat down out of the way and waited quietly because the charge nurses were still discussing assignments. When they finished, I'd ask the charge nurse if there was a patient I should pick. I do this because sometimes there were interesting procedures or I'd get a chance to practice my skills the next day. As I was waiting, Pantsuit Lady watched me, and when she saw me sit down, she immediately snapped her fingers at me and pointed down to the floor and said, "You, come here." The voice was nasty enough that it stopped several people mid-report to find out what was going on. I stood up and approached her, and she grabbed my sleeve and pulled me over closer to the charge nurses. Ignoring me and talking directly to the charge nurses, she proceeded to tell them that I was their aide, and she wanted them to make sure I was written up for being late. I realized then that she thought I worked there. I was a lot less confrontational or aggressive then. My, how nursing changes you. But I never really got the chance to say anything as she jerked my hand away from me and wiped it like she had just touched doo-doo, looked at me with a face I can only describe as sour lemon smugness, and walked away. The charge looked at me and said, "We already have an aide, but sure could use you. Let me see how." She trailed off as I held out my hand and said, "I don't work here. I'm with my school, and I'm here to pick out a patient for clinicals tomorrow. Does that lady always treat people like they're dogs?" The charge nurse stared at me for a second and then started laughing and said, "Stupid jerk, don't mind her. We all hate her." She then asked, "How much longer do you have?" I replied that I graduate in 6 months. I also asked if they had any interesting procedures or if they had a patient that a one-to-one student nurse would make easier to handle. She also asked where I planned on working after I graduated. I just looked down the hallway where the pantsuit had gone and just said, "Well, not here," which made her laugh even more. I had a truly relaxing clinical the next day with a sweet elderly lady with dementia and a minor medical condition. We folded laundry together to keep her busy and to keep her from pulling at her surgical sites. What was really fun about it is that the next semester, when representatives came to try to recruit you to the hospital, I got to reply to a question about why I wasn't interested in their hospital. I got to say that I didn't appreciate the way they treated their staff and tell the story. There was recognition in their eyes when I described the lady, and they shook their heads when I told them about the event. Plus, I knew that my hospital was waiting for me to graduate so I could come to work in the ICU, which was my dream at the time. And it was for a bit more pay than the other hospital was offering anyway. My wife got mad, so she changed the locks on our house. I, 30 male, have a beautiful wife who loves to serve others. We bought a home down the street from my family. I have a sweet sister who's 17. She likes to crash at our house with her friends. My wife normally is pretty easygoing until recently. My sister's friends have been leaving a mess, mostly towels on the floor after using our pool. My wife got upset picking up after them every day. I've asked my sister to make sure the house is clean after they leave, and it has been better. My wife also complained that some of her perfumes and clothes and personal items have gone missing. My sister said it's not her. I believe my sister. I just don't see her doing that. I told my wife, and we agreed to just replace them. Last week, my wife made a couple of pans of cinnamon rolls from scratch. One pan was for us, the second pan was for a coworker's family. My wife went to the gym, I went to work, and my sister and her friends came by. The one pan wasn't enough for her and her friends. They wanted the second pan of cinnamon rolls too, and my sister texted my wife asking if they could eat them. My wife said no. They ate them anyways. My wife got upset and went out and bought new locks. When I came home, my wife handed me a new key and told me that she didn't want anyone else to have a key to our house. I tried to calm her down and tell her that I would just go replace the eaten cinnamon rolls with store-bought ones. My wife decided this was her hill to die on and said no. My sister lost the privilege to come when we're not home. Replacing stolen items wasn't good enough anymore. My mom called and asked if my sister could use the pool as a back-to-school party. I was under the impression my mom would be there. I said yes. My mom was at work and our schedules clashed. The easiest solution was for me to change the locks back so they could just come into the house. My mom didn't come with my sister. When my wife got home after the party, it was a mess. She sent me photos. She called me the jerk for changing the locks without talking to her about it. Keep in mind, she did too. Then told me I broke her trust. She wasn't safe in her home because she keeps getting robbed and I refused to put an end to it. I did talk to my sister. Then my wife let me know she was staying with a friend for a while. Am I the jerk here? I feel like I've tried to right any wrongs that have happened between my wife and my sister. Update. Sorry, I haven't been able to reply the past couple of hours. I've been busy. I talked to my mom again and let her know my sister isn't allowed over without me home. I asked a friend's wife who is a maid to come clean our home, so if and when my wife comes home, it's clean. The last thing is, my mom asked me to help cover my sister's cheer. She's on track for a scholarship. I told my mom I would pay half if my wife's things were returned. If not, the money was going to replace the stolen items. Also, my sister was invited to homecoming. She wanted me to buy a dress. I told her no for not following our home rules, and the money I saved for the dress is going to pay for the maid. I did replace the locks again. I also am planning a romantic dinner I will make and clean up. I heard a lot about the cinnamon rolls. Someone on here gave me the idea to make them. I am for a dessert. Update. My sister and my mom left a few minutes ago. My sister had a bag of my wife's things, more than I thought was gone. Most items are in poor shape. The big thing is, she had my wife's grandmother's ring I thought was in the safe. I had no idea it was gone. My sister said that she found it on my wife's nightstand during the party. She forgot she had it on when she left our home. The ring isn't valuable, it's just sentimental. I told my mom who the ring belonged to. My mom lost it. My sister is now grounded. Last update tonight. My wife is coming home. I'm staying at a friend's house until we can work some of this out. I already started it, but I did put the locks back on my wife bought. My family doesn't have that key. Your wife has a right to not be stolen from in her own home. Your sister is disrespectful and entitled, and you are the jerk for prioritizing her over your wife's right to literally not be stolen from. If you want to keep your wife, you better change the locks and refuse to give anyone a key. You're also the jerk for thinking store-bought cinnamon rolls are a replacement for homemade. You're the jerk. What's wrong with you? Your freeloading sister and her crew go into your home and eat your food, leave towels on the floor and whatnot, and you're okay with that? Because it's not you who's doing all the cleaning, but it's your wife? Then when your wife has had enough and changes the locks so your freeloading users can't get into your home anymore, she makes the correct decision by changing the locks in the home. And you, the jerk, you change it back so that your younger brat sister can continue her being a jerk. Wow, you are truly something else. You better grow up fast and start choosing your wife over your crappy family, or you're going to lose the best thing that ever happened to you. Seriously? You really typed all that out and you still think you're okay? Go get a house with your sister since you care more about wanting to be the cool brother instead of protecting your wife and her property. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk in this story or not? Please let us know. There's a few things I'd like to say, but I don't think we're allowed to. My daughter treats me like dirt, but demands I pay for her college. I, 38 male, have a 19-year-old daughter, Ariel, with my ex-wife, Lauren, who's 39. We had Ariel too young, and it was a huge struggle. We moved into Lauren's families. I was working multiple jobs. Me and Lauren were best friends through all this, but things ended when Ariel was 2. Lauren's friend, Tori, 38, told me that Lauren had been messaging guys, and when they went out, she would give out her number. I checked Lauren's phone, and I found it. I asked for a divorce. Lauren was upset and wanted to reconcile. I didn't and got split custody. Lauren made my life horrible. Lauren badmouthed me, would miss pickup times, and make decisions without talking to me. Her dad offered money to relinquish custody. I told him off. Ariel is now 19 and just started college. The deal was me and her mom would split it. I remarried Tori when Ariel was 6. Tori was a rock during the divorce, but we didn't date until 2 years later. Lauren used this to warp Ariel against Tori and our son, who's 13. She excludes them. Whenever she spends the night,
She will just talk to me or go to her room if my family was around. Our son walks to the basement if she comes over. It hurts me a lot. I've spent thousands on therapy before people bring that up. It's still being utilized. But at this point, Ariel is being nasty for the sake of it. Her mom has convinced her I cheated with her friend and had a baby, which is funny because as I've pointed out, the timelines don't even match up. I've done everything at this point, including family time, one-on-one, and therapy. Ariel is plain rude to them and they are done trying. Ariel graduated from high school in May and hosted a party. I was invited, but my family wasn't. I told Ariel I found that disrespectful, so I'd send a card but wouldn't be going. She didn't care and we haven't spoken since. I get a call from Lauren saying she paid the first semester and was wondering when I'd be paying. I said I was no longer paying, as I'm not pulling money out of my household when Ariel is disrespectful to 2/3 of it. My ex went off, saying we had an agreement. I reminded her of when her dad tried to buy my custody and said, "You have what you've always wanted, full control and custody. You won, so figure it out." Then texted her that I've been putting up with this long enough. She got her 18 years of child support from me, so until she planned on setting the record straight that I was done with both of them, and blocked her. I called Ariel and told her the same, gave her the reasons I'm not paying, and told her she needed to look into loans. But I would pay for college if she at least tried to form a bond with my family because she created this situation with her attitude. So if she wants my help, she needs to attempt it. She started crying, but I didn't fall for it. I told her what my expectations were and to let me know what her plan is so I can move the money around. My wife is on my side here, saying we've been the bad guys for long enough, but I'm getting crap from others. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Everyone who is saying OP is the jerk here, you need to get off your high horse and put yourself in his shoes. His daughter treats him like an ATM, all the while disrespecting him. What's worse is she wants him to pay for college with money that will come from both him and his new wife, who she treats like dirt. Like it or not, they are family, and if she refuses to be a part of that family, she has no right to additional support from it. She can't have it both ways. He paid child support. He made sure she was taken care of growing up. She's now an adult and has to deal with the consequences of her actions. For everyone who said anything other than not the jerk, you all know you would do the same thing in OP's shoes. People like to be morally outraged hypocrites these days, and that crap needs to stop. And to everyone saying he pulled the rug out from under her, seriously people? Maybe he made a promise to help her, but that doesn't allow her to act like a jerk. If you're a jerk to people in the real world, they wouldn't help you no matter what you promised. Why is it different for her father? This is her mother's doing, and if her grandfather wanted to buy out his custody of her, then her conniving mother can get him to pay for college. Agreed. It's not his daughter's fault for thinking like this, it's his ex's, but he's not required to pay for her college or anything else when she has zero respect for him or his new family. Edit. I suppose I didn't word this properly. I understand she's 19 now and should be able to do basic maths and realize for herself that OP didn't cheat, but we also don't know what else has been said to make Ariel dislike OP and his wife and his kid. So I guess saying it's not her fault is technically wrong because she's a young adult now and should be able to come to conclusions herself. But manipulation from a young age can really mess with you and warp your brain. Like I said, we don't know what else her mom has said. Don't come at me, because all I want to say is based on what OP wrote. To me, he's not the jerk. I honestly really do feel for the girl. Her mind was warped by her horrid mother to think her father is a bad person. But at the same time, she chose to pick the mother's side and believe the nonsense told to her and let it influence her behavior towards that part of her family. She's an adult and needs to make up her own mind rather than just believing her mother. Besides, OP isn't cutting her off completely. If she wants the money, she just needs to play nice and at least try and be reasonable. I think it's actually potentially a good thing to push for that, as it's still giving a chance for her to figure things out for herself. I hope she makes the right choice and tries to reconcile things. It's the mother she needs to get the heck away from after all. She's the toxic one. You left out the part where he waited until the last possible moment to do her out of college. Ariel's behavior is nothing new. OP made his mind a long time ago. He could have told her the moment she graduated from high school, but he didn't. He, a grown man, deliberately did her out of college as an act of vengeance, which puts the entire story into question. You're the jerk. Not for not paying your part of the agreement,
but for springing this on them now, so late in the game. Forms for college grants and loans are due in winter for the following year. It's now almost September when classes start and tuition is due. You waited until the very last minute to give your daughter ultimatums, and now, when she's got nowhere else to turn, you threaten her entire college year. That is manipulative, exploitative, and contemptible. Financial aid forms are submitted once a year. If you were a man of your word, you'd pay your share this year as you agreed to, and let your daughter know that next year she has to figure out her tuition on her own. But by the comments you're leaving all over the place, I know you probably won't do that. You've decided you're done with your daughter, and you don't care one bit what happens to her. You're the jerk. I'm so sick of the "her mom poisoned her mind" narrative. For her to believe her mother, then you had to have not shown up a lot and been a less than hands-on dad, because let's be fair, from the start of this post, you make clear she was a mistake and a struggle. I would say everyone sucks here, but considering the fact that your daughter is the same age you were when you had her, and you start the post by talking about mistakes you made when you were her age, that you would understand that youth is not equal to perspective, and maybe not take your frustrations with the situation out on her by damaging her future prospects. Well, what do you think? Is Opie a jerk for not paying for his daughter's college or not? Please let us know. When did all these kids start thinking they're entitled to have their college paid for by their parents, no matter how they treat them? Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to pay for the wine glass she broke? A few days ago, my girlfriend, Trish, not her real name, was cleaning the kitchen windows. In the midst of her cleaning, she accidentally knocked over a dish from the drying rack, and that dish landed on and shattered an expensive wine glass of mine. I say mine because it was given to me by my mother as a Christmas gift last year. The glass retails for around $120. When she told me she had broken the glass by accident, which she was very nervous about because she knows the glass was expensive, we had a discussion, may classify this as an argument, that lasted 3 days about how it would get replaced and who would pay. After all of this talking, she finally, she says, gave in and gave me 40% of the cost to replace the glass. I had initially asked that she replace the glass in full, but after discussion realized if we are partners, it would be logical to use the 60-40 calculation we use for everything else. Background: Trish and I have been living together for about a year. When we initially decided to move in together, we decided to split all expenses 60-40 because of our combined income distribution. I make 60% of our gross monthly earnings, she makes 40%. After the initial agreement, Trish has now said she does not feel good about the agreement and wants me to give the money back to her. Her reasoning is that A, it was a complete accident, and B, she would never want to buy any wine glass that expensive ever again. My argument is that if we are to live together, we are going to be sharing costs, and inevitably things are going to break and need replacing and repairing. I liked this wine glass, again, which was a gift from my mother, and would like to replace it so that we have a matching set once more. More background. I know for a fact that Trish is financially able to reimburse me the 40% and would suffer no undue hardship from the loss of those funds. On the other hand, I am also fully able to replace the glass without it affecting my financial stability. Am I the jerk for asking Trish to reimburse 40% of the wine glass she broke by accident? Edit. It appears that according to popular sentiment, I am the jerk. I have therefore given Trish back her money. Thank you for the comments that gave gentle and thoughtful wisdom on what you believed might be more of a root cause of this argument. I don't think we've been in a good place for a long time, and asking her for money was never about control. I wanted to see her take personal responsibility because that is what I would have done. FYI, Trish was with me and signed off on this post before I submitted it. She has read all of the comments. After doing so, we now understand that she does not wish to have such nice things and is worried about being too materialistic, as well as a prisoner in her own home, having to walk on eggshells in the fear that she might break something else. She's also sad that I was not able to show compassion and let it slide. I do struggle with showing empathy and compassion sometimes. And I also agree with the people who have commented on the argument spanning 3 days. It's exhausting for both of us. Life is too short. We have little fights like this all the time, and it's wearing on both of us. It might be time to call it quits. Info. Why was a $120, presumably delicate, wine glass sitting in or next to a drying rack with regular dishes in the first place? If I had glassware that pricey, it would be washed, dried, and put away after use. Everyone sucks here. You're the jerk. Nickel and diming each other like this does not make for a successful relationship.
This was an accident. If she had done this on purpose, I could see asking for reimbursement, but this is how you treat a roommate, not a girlfriend. Frankly, OP, I think you bear some responsibility here. If the glass is that expensive, it should be washed, dried, and put away immediately. Accidents happen, but it wouldn't have happened had it not been left out on the drying pad. I think her paying 40% is the maximum amount she should pay. It's not about the wine glass. She's sick of being nickel and dimed over every little thing. She's already walking on eggshells around you because one wrong step and she's stuck paying $100 since you insist on having stupid expensive junk all over your shared living space. She doesn't want to have to constantly stress about expensive wine glasses or plates or whatever when simple, good quality items are just as aesthetically pleasing and more functional. Let me spell it out for you. Living with you is stressful for her. You are ignoring how she prefers to live because on some level you enjoy the control in watching her squirm. For that, you're the jerk. Exactly. I was stressed reading his rules. She was cleaning. She was not being careless. What if it was a guest who dropped the glass? Make them replace it? You're the jerk. When my husband and I moved in together, he washed a very expensive sweater, designer and cashmere, in the washing machine. It was ruined. You know what I did? I cried a bit and then I let it go. I left it in a place that caused him to think he could wash it, and he didn't think to check the tag. It was an accident, and I treated it as such. I didn't demand he buy me a new one. I just got over it. Life moved on, and we didn't choose to cause hard feelings in our relationship over an accident. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his girlfriend? Please let us know. $120 wine glass? Then you got us over here washing and reusing our straws. Military revenge from a non-military person. Back in the early 1990s, when I was married, we had the beginnings of internet in Brisbane, Australia. My husband, now ex, collected military insignia and he did trades with force members from all over the world. Basically, they posted pictures of what they would trade and others responded with photos of what they would be traded for and receive. Now on to the story. Came home one Friday night after work and hubby was upset. After getting the boys settled, I got him to tell me the problem. He had organized a military insignia trade with a US Marine and he had posted his items to the Marine months prior but had received nothing back. Each time he contacted the Marine, he was given conflicting excuses as to why the trade items had not been posted to him, and he now thought he was being scammed and would never receive the trade items. This had been going on for months. Now hubby was scrupulously honest, and he was very upset that a fellow military person would scam him. Now, being the sort of person I am, I was very angry on his behalf. But what could we do? I mean, the trade person was half a world away in the USA. Well, I also used to watch the TV show Jag every week. I copied every message conversation hubby and the Marine had had. I saved and sorted them and uploaded them onto a special website I created just for this using HTML code I had taught myself. I pulled an all-nighter and worked from 8 p.m. Friday night until 10 p.m. Saturday night. It was all laid out in spectacular honesty. Then I went and searched this Marine and found his full name, address, rank, and unit, commanding officer, base where he was posted, etc. Basically, every bit of free information I could locate. I put all of this information on the brand new website as well. Then I spent a few hours from 10 p.m. Saturday night to 2 a.m. Sunday morning getting the email address of as many U.S. military bases as I could all over the world. Then at 2 p.m. on Sunday morning, I sent the link to that website to every email address I had found. U.S. Army, Marine, Air Force, JAG, embassies, etc. all over the world. And then I went to bed and slept. Woke up Sunday afternoon to a phone call from a ranking officer in the U.S. Marines. All the items my hubby had sent the Marine for trade were being posted back to him using fastest air freight. All trade items that were agreed upon were also being posted to hubby using fastest air freight. Ranking officer wanted to know how much time went into my website and what hourly rate of pay was I currently on in my administrative job, and I told him for him to tell me that money to the value of my hourly rate times the hours I put into the website would also be heading our way. I stated that once hubby's items were returned, I was more than willing to pull down the website. I respected the military from all countries. I just did not want the Marine to be able to scam anyone else like he had tried to do to my hubby. I was told not to worry about the Marine. He was being managed by his superiors and we would never hear from him again. Yes, we did receive everything, and quite fast as well for back then. Am I the jerk for not telling my landlord I had bought a house? I'd been renting from a landlord for a few years, and he was pretty typical landlord. Take the rent, do as few repairs as cheap as possible, etc. I'm sure you know the drill. He also was kinda late on stuff. Like every year, the lease says renewals should be sent out 2 months before the end of the lease to give the option, and every year he procrastinates until the last week or two of the lease. I was looking to buy my first house, and I closed on one 4 months before my lease was up. But I kept some overlap so I could live in the apartment while repairing the house. 2 months before the lease was up, like usual, my landlord forgot to send out the renewals. I thought of telling him I wouldn't be renewing, then I remembered that my neighbors who moved had trouble with him bringing way too many potential tenants to tour. Nobody wanted the apartment because the online listing was a bait and switch, so people would see something looking in good repair, then come to tour and see that it was bad. And nobody wanted to sign the lease, so he just kept bringing more and more people instead of making an honest listing at an honest price. So I didn't say anything. I just kept fixing up the house and moving my stuff. Then, 1 week before my lease expired, my landlord texted me the renewal. I actually didn't see it because I had my phone on Do Not Disturb, but the next morning he kept texting wanting my signed renewal. I told him I didn't plan on renewing, and he got really angry, demanding to know what apartment I was moving to next. I got the impression he wanted to call my next landlord to complain about me. Anyway, I told him I was moving back in with my parents. I didn't want to tell him about the house because of the temper he was getting with me. He started showing the apartment right away, but I had already finished moving out, so it didn't bother me. But when I stopped by to turn in my keys and ask for my security deposit, he got angry, saying that I had some nerve asking for $1,300 when I had just done him out of a month's rent by not giving notice. I told him that the security deposit was for damages, and if he wanted to withhold it, he would have to send over an itemized list of damages and receipts for repairs. He gave me the security deposit back, but yelled at me that he took care of his tenants and I was selfish for leaving without notice. I just left, but I guess I'm feeling kinda conflicted. On one hand, it is literally his job, his only job, to handle leases and find out who's renewing, and if he forgot, that's not really my problem. But I also know that I knew I was leaving for the better part of a year, and I told him with less than a week. Am I the jerk for not telling my landlord I bought a house? Edit. For all of you keyboard lawyers in the comments being like, your lease says, I've read my lease. It doesn't say anything that y'all are saying it says. Have you read my lease? And if so, how the heck did you get into my bedroom desk? Not the jerk. If you want to be a landlord and you expect to earn that passive income, you need to take care of the basics. Not the jerk. He didn't follow the rules of the lease, since you don't mention any rules about a 30-day notice, that it seems to have to go from lease to lease. That's his bad, not yours. New quality inspector wants it by the book, and now has to work unpaid overtime because she's salary. I'll try to make this brief. I was trained in an advanced assembly position to replace a longtime employee who retired last week. I trained for 3 months, following the man's instructions to the letter, even taking notes on the ways he's developed in order to meet our company's demanding production quotas. Last Monday was my first day officially in the position, and I felt I was doing almost as good of a job as he was. The way it works, everything I build goes into a 24-hour hold. When I come in, I pull them from the hold, clean them, and prepare them for shipping. So last Monday, I start pulling my 24-hour inventory and getting it ready for quality to final inspect before it goes to shipping. Well, we also have a new quality inspector in my department who's apparently really gung-ho about her job. She's salaried, is only supposed to work 8 hours, and has never missed a chance to rub it in our faces because she was also a production employee until 2 weeks ago when she got promoted. She sees me cleaning the assemblies and proceeds to chew me out because they had only been on hold for 15 hours or so, not 24. I informed her that I was taught that the 24-hour hold was to ensure they hold pressure, and that if they hadn't lost pressure in 12 hours, they won't lose pressure in 24, and that by the time I had them all cleaned, they would be out of the 24-hour hold, and I would have another batch to assemble and put in hold for the next day. That's how it works. I clean and prepare until my other coworkers have assembled all my sub-assemblies. Then I do the finish assembly while they work on new stuff for the next day. She was adamant she wouldn't touch them until the full 24 hours had passed. So she went and got her supervisor, my supervisor, and the engineering supervisor, who all agreed with me but could see her point. So they told me to start pulling my assemblies out of hold at the 24-hour mark after the day. So I did. And at 3 o'clock, she had between 25 and 30 pieces to inspect every day last week. That's right at 3 hours worth of work, and she's supposed to leave at 3:30. However, if she has parts in the inspection area, she has to inspect them and get them to shipping the same day. She can't leave parts overnight. So she was forced to work overtime for free. I've never felt so much anger from one person when they looked at me before. Fast forward to today, my supervisor comes to me and tells me to go back to the system I was using before, that it seemed to flow smoother. I know the real reason though, and that's all that matters. Stalkers think they can scare me out of my new home. Cast. We've got me. We've got entitled Stalkers 1 and 2. We've got the kind neighbor. I should give you guys just a little backstory on how I ended up in this situation. I grew up in Scientology. My parents joined back in 1991 and moved to the States to be involved more than they could from the UK. In 2015, when I was 15, I joined the Sea Org and signed a billion-year contract. I know how insane that is, but it was something my parents were pressuring me to do because they thought it would allow me to be the best Scientologist I could be. But last August, I saw my opportunity to leave, and I took it. I was sent out with a group of other Sea Org members to confront some people who had been declared as suppressive peoples who were outside the building. When one of them said that they had a permit to film some stuff in the street, and since it was public that we couldn't stop them, and that it was in the car parked about 5 minutes away from where we were. One of the women I had come out with me told me to go with the guy and check it out, so I did. When we got around the corner, I told the guy I wanted to leave, but hadn't been able to because there was always someone watching. He suggested that maybe since we were out of sight, maybe we could get into his car and he would drive me to a hotel and get me to a room so I could plan where I could go after a couple of days. So I took the opportunity and got into his car and finally felt so much freedom that I had never felt before. He also had been a Scientologist and had escaped the gold base years ago, so understood my situation very well. And once I figured out that I wanted to go to Washington, he got in contact with some friends of his who were able to get me there without Scientology having any way of tracing my movements. I have been here ever since. I live in a nice neighborhood, well, at least to where I had been before, and had managed to get a job working in a coffee shop. I've been so happy to be free, but I never fully stopped looking over my shoulder. I know the policies regarding people like me, and I've been keeping an eye out for them ever since I left. 2 months ago, I noticed that a car with tinted windows was following me. I knew it was down to Scientology. They had somehow found out where I had moved and were trying to gather information on me. Last week, they finally knocked on my door. Even though I knew it was going to happen sooner or later, I was shaking. My neighbor, who has always been really kind to me, was over. She comes over sometimes just to check on me, and she'll bring me food if she feels like I haven't eaten properly. She's basically been like a mom to me, and I love her for it. I opened the door, and things got really uncomfortable really fast. Stalker 1.
Your parents have been worried about you, and you're hiding out here. Why?
Me. I'm not hiding. I just don't want to be in a cult anymore. Stalker 1, shouting.
Liar! You are a criminal. You broke your contract, and you fled. You are evil.
Kind neighbor interrupts. Hold on a minute. Stop shouting. OP is not evil, and she is free to live her life as she pleases. Now leave her property, or I will call the police. Stalker 2, holding a camera pointed at my face. You are a suppressive person. You may not set foot in any Scientology building again. If you do, we will have you charged for harassment. I'm confused. But you're the ones who tracked me down. I know the policies. I know I'm a SP. I know about being disconnected with my family. So what do either of us gain from you being here? Kind neighbor. Put the camera down. Stalker 1.
No.
Kind neighbor closes the door in their faces and goes to close the curtains, as I told her that they would probably try filming through my windows. I went and closed all the other curtains in my home, and after kind neighbor left, I locked my doors too. They're still watching my house from a car across the street, and I feel uncomfortable about going outside. I know what kind of methods they can use when they are fair gaming an SP. I know now after watching Going Clear and Leia Ramini's show
that my experience with them after leaving is tame, but it's still pretty creepy. Why they feel entitled to follow people around to a point where I'm basically a prisoner in my own home, I don't know, but I wish they would leave me alone. I'm not sure what information they have gathered on me, but I know whatever it is will have been sent back and it will be used against me in some way. But until they try and use it, I have no way to really do anything. If anyone has any advice, please let me know. My wife refuses to help with anything around the house. I, 33 male, am married to Molly, who's 36. We have a son, Theo, who's 5. Molly and I got married 7 years ago, but both decided to focus on our careers before we jumped into anything ultra responsible, like having kids. I'm a journalist and she was a midwife, and we both did very well for ourselves. Our combined income meant we could actually survive this economy. Because we were so financially stable and kind of getting on the older end of the spectrum for having kids, we decided to have our first and only kid, which is Theo, of course. When Theo was born, Molly and I both took time off of work to spend the first few weeks with him, but eventually my paid break ended and I was forced to go back to my job. Molly did not go back. In fact, Molly did not go back for so long that she was fired. This caused a giant rift between us at the time, but we came to the agreement that she could be a stay-at-home mom while I went back to work. This worked out for a few months until Theo started walking, and then Molly stopped doing anything around the house. She would go out with Theo all day, and I would inevitably come home to laundry everywhere, toys scattered, kitchen a mess, and just no sense of cleanliness at all. I would end up having to clean the house after an 8-hour shift, only to have to work more on reports. This has continued for the whole 5 years of Theo's life. Molly has been terrible at cleaning or taking care of the house at all. She does good with Theo, feeding him, cleaning him, etc., but I'm always left to clean the messes afterwards. At a time, I thought maybe it was too much for her and asked if she wanted to hire a nanny while we both worked, but she refused. I've asked her to maybe clean up a little before I come home. She agreed, did it for a time, and then stopped. Yesterday, I had enough. I came home from work only to find Play-Doh all over the living room floor, kitchen ingredients left out on the counters, water spilled over the hallways, toys everywhere, food on the floor. Edit. I feel the need to clarify that I understand kids make messes, but this wasn't just Theo's mess, it was Molly's mess too. It was extra stress, and I finally snapped. I told Molly that I was done with it, and that I wasn't going to clean these messes anymore, that it was practically her job to clean the house, and that she does literally nothing, so this should be easy for her. She snapped back, saying that she takes care of Theo all day, and is teaching him and making him into a good person. Partially a lie, since Theo now goes to school between 9 and 3. She said that kids make messes, and if I can't deal with that, then I shouldn't be a father. That I was horrid to say she does nothing when she takes care of a 5-year-old while I'm away. It stopped after a while because Theo came inside from where he was playing in the garden, but I got told to sleep on the couch. I came back from work half an hour ago, and I'm still getting the silent treatment. So I wanted to know if I was in the wrong and if I should apologize. Am I the jerk? Edit. Theo is in his 2nd year of school. He started when he was 4 and will finish when he's 11. You're the jerk. I've done both, a career mom, now a stay-at-home mom with my own business I built the last 2 years while working and being the primary parent. It's August, so I'm guessing he just started school. Now, if he's been in school for months, that's different. But a week? She's probably just catching her breath. It's way more work to raise a kid at home than meets the eye. It's exhausting, actually. It's not really feasible for one person to do all of the childcare and all of the home stuff and still have time for their own self-care. You're expecting too much of your wife with a kid. She's raising him. She's good with him. She's making sure he's set up for success. She doesn't do nothing. She's raising your kid. Hire a housekeeper, far less than a nanny. You're the jerk. Just to give you some perspective, I'm a single parent. I work full-time. Both of my kids are around your son's age. I spend literally every free second I have cleaning, and they completely undo it the moment they get home from school. Case in point, today I scrubbed the rug and tidied up the whole living room, and in the space of me running to the restroom, they had knocked over a jar of pizza sauce and accidentally dumped cheese all over the floor because they were trying to have a pizza picnic. I worked with them to clean it up, but it still looks like I did nothing. In fact, I have relatives who aren't welcome in my home anymore because I got sick of the comments about the mess in my house when all that I do is clean.
5-year-olds are just expert mess makers because they're exploring and interacting with the world. It's possible your wife has the place spotless until just before you get home, but is fed up with the crappy way that you speak to her. You're the jerk. You sound like a complete monster. When will men learn that raising a kid is not as easy as you think it is? Sitting in a comfy office chair all day making jokes with coworkers is 1,000 times easier than raising kids. How dare you come home and throw a fit like that because things don't look perfect? This isn't the 50s anymore, and guys like you need to get over it. Want something to be spotless? Shut up and do it yourself. Don't you ever throw a fit like that with her again just because you're cranky and insecure. Major red flags and way too much marinara. I hope she dumps you and finds a man who knows how to clean things himself and doesn't act like a toddler. But let's be honest, it's 2022, so she probably won't. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Is a lack of brain cells a requirement to leave comments on Reddit? I think so, Karen. I think so. My husband wants me to put his name on the title of my house. First, some important info. I, 30 female, have been married to my husband, 34 male, for 8 years now. We live in a culture where you never combine your finances after marriage. Some do, but they are the exception to the rule. Also, in the event of a divorce, there's nothing like common property or anything like that. You keep what you bought and anything that has your name on it. We met while we were studying, graduated the same year, have the same primary income. I do some freelance work. We are so in tune in everything except how to spend money, and he likes to travel while I'm a homebody. Since the first day of marriage, I proposed that we share the expenses, rent, utilities, groceries, cleaning lady, equally, even though culturally the man is responsible for all of them. Then we should have a savings account to save for a house. He didn't want to save for a house. He said that his money is better spent on experiences. And anyway, there's nothing wrong with renting until we are in our 50s, then we can buy a house. In the end, we agreed to have a shared account for expenses, then whatever is left is ours to do with what we want. He tends to take at least 2 weekend trips with his friends, staying in expensive hotels, going to concerts. Also, even though I cook almost every meal at home, most times he would just order out for lunch or dinner. I also go on weekend trips with my friends, but they are more day trips to the beach, hiking in the mountains, scuba diving. Each trip costs less than 1/10 of what his trips do. Well, I've been saving for all of these 8 years, and now I'm about to close on a small apartment and pay it in full, no interest or monthly payments. The plan is to live there, save what I am used to saving, plus what I used to spend on rent, buy a bigger house, and rent this apartment for extra income. And now he wants me to add his name to the deed. I flat out told him no. He didn't want to save. He didn't want to put a cent towards the house, so his name does not go on the deed. I also told him that I plan to buy a bigger house, and now that he doesn't have to pay rent, he can save and put his share towards the next house. Then he can have his name on the deed of the house. Well, he called me a jerk, said that this is not what it meant to be married, and took some days off work to go on a trip to cool off. I don't think I'm a jerk, but I also tend to be stubborn when it comes to what I perceive as financial irresponsibility. So, am I the jerk? P.S. I still paid for dates, bought him gifts just because I see something he might like, went on one expensive trip a year with him, usually abroad, etc. I just saved a lot too. Not the jerk at all, and for the love of goodness, do not put his name on the deeds. He put absolutely zero towards it, and you're even offering him rent-free accommodation so he can save towards the bigger house, yet he calls you the jerk? You guys need a proper sit-down to discuss finances, as this is not acceptable in the slightest. If he wants to blow all his money on experiences, that's fine, but he doesn't get the security of property in return. Not the jerk. We have a saying here. He wants to have his cake and eat it too. Basically, he wants all his expensive trips that he pays for, and he wants you to save up and buy him an apartment with no drain on his personal resources. That's a big red flag. Do not put his name on the apartment. If you buy another place and rent this out, then make sure the new place and the rent go to you and only you. Do not let him benefit from your hard work if he isn't willing to share in the efforts. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. We have marital property states here. If you buy a house while you're married, then you get divorced, your ex is entitled to half of that house, whether they paid for it or not. Am I the jerk for not helping my sister with her IVF? I'm 34, female. My sister, Meg, who's 31,
cheated on my ex-brother-in-law Josh with his best friend Liam. They did this for over 4 years until Josh found out and broke up. Liam and Meg have been officially together for 5 years. My ex-brother-in-law has been my best friend since elementary school, and my sister knew him through me, and despite me saying it would make things uncomfortable, she insisted on hitting on him until he noticed and they started dating. My relationship with Meg took a toll on me because I was annoyed with her for doing this to my best friend, but we never cut contact because of my nephew, her son with Josh, and my godson. 1 year ago, I received a large amount of money, inheritance, and because I have a good financial condition, I decided that half would go to help my parents and siblings. My parents received 50%, and my siblings, there are 4 of them, 12.5% each. My parents decided to renovate the house. 2 of my brothers paid off their house debts. My other sister asked if she could pay for her IVF treatment with her girlfriend with that money, and I said yes. At no time did I control how they wanted to spend their money. Well, Meg was super happy with my help and talked about paying for her IVF with Liam. Well, Meg was super happy with my help and talked about paying for her IVF with Liam, his infertility, and I hesitated. I'm still best friends with Josh, and I can tell you what they did to him caused years of therapy to get him to start thinking about dating someone. I don't talk to Liam 99% of the time, and I only helped my sister because after all, she had my nephew. I didn't go to the wedding, and I always made it very clear that it wasn't a relationship I would support, but they are free. So I told her that I didn't feel comfortable giving her the money for this as it involves Liam, her and their relationship specifically, so I'd rather help in some other way, renovate the house, pay off debts, refurbish the house, and that I would take double care that the money didn't go to that. She started screaming, telling me to get over something that had nothing to do with me and that was years ago, and that I was treating her and my other sister differently because of the past. We argued a lot, and I decided to create a fund for my godson that only he could handle at age 18 instead of helping her. Well, this created even more mess because she claims that I helped everyone but her and that I was cruel in denying helping her to have another kid when they can't naturally. I really don't feel comfortable doing this. Am I the jerk? By the way, they didn't receive this inheritance. She never received the money. It went to my nephew's fund before she ever received it. Well, I'll put it here. They told me about the plans. I didn't ask, just because they were excited. After I told them at a family dinner about the money, I said, you can renovate your house, pay your debts. And my other sister asked if she could use it for something else, IVF, on another day. So Meg found out and talked to me before I gave her any money. Not the jerk. It's your inheritance money. You get to choose what to do with it. I think setting up a fund for your nephew is a brilliant idea. If she wants another kid so bad, she can go cheat on Liam. Not the jerk. Okay, so you are treating your 2 sisters differently. So what? One of them didn't put your best friend through the ringer. The money is yours. You could have chosen to keep the money. You could have given it to Josh, an art museum, or the local animal shelter. Meg doesn't have any say in what you do with the money. If she really wants another kid, she should try adoption. To be true, you were placing conditions on her that you didn't on your other siblings. However, given the history, I think it's warranted. It's your money. You don't have to give it to anybody. You don't owe her anything. The fact that you're giving it to her son is more than generous. Not the jerk. You're the jerk. I feel for Josh, and it sucks what your sister did, but if you're giving the inheritance money as a gift to your parents and siblings, you shouldn't be able to dictate what they do with the money. At that point, it's no longer a gift, but almost a bribe. Maybe there's a better word than bribe, but essentially you're telling your sister, hey, you can have this large sum of money, but only if you do what I want you to do. In your post, you offered them options like renovating the house or paying bills, but obviously to them, having a kid is far more important. To me, it feels like you're punishing them on behalf of Josh, but your sister is right. Whatever happened between your sister and Josh is between them. Are you sure you weren't in love with Josh? I understand being a good friend and seeing how hard the situation hit Josh, but you shouldn't be involved or take sides when it's been over 5 years and you're giving a gift to your sister. That's being petty. May as well not give a gift. Also, what would happen if your sister and Liam adopt? Would you not make a trust fund for the kid because it's Liam's kid, even though they're still your nephew? I kind of doubt it. Well, what do you think? Is OP a jerk for the way she's going about this or not? Please let us know. I don't care. Just come and get all of your stuff. Okay, works for me.
A little background. I work for a company that sells and services point-of-sale equipment. We also usually install updated network equipment, run wiring, and set up new wireless that has separate networks for both the business and guests if need be. When we go to install this equipment and get the customer set up, we have various documents for them to fill out and sign that range from the fact that they did receive the equipment in working order to whether they wanted a guest network set up and what they wanted it to be called. One of the important areas that we have the customer initial before signing the bottom of the form is that if for any reason they decide to cancel their contract with us, we would remove all of our equipment and they would be responsible to either have someone else there to hook it back up how they wanted it, or they could pay us an extra fee to configure everything how they needed it to work without our equipment. So on to the customer of this story. We had just demoed and sold a system to a local health food cafe, and I was tasked with getting all of the equipment installed and set up, and they did us a favor and didn't open until noon on the day we installed. So when I arrived, I discussed all the things in the document for them to sign and told them if they would like to review it before signing, they could, and I would start unloading all the equipment and would answer any questions they had. Like most customers, they skimmed it and then signed. So I installed the registers, credit card readers, got the internet provider to allow our router to take over, installed the wireless system, ran cables for the kitchen printers and the whole 9 yards. Even was nice enough to run an extra cable for their manager's computer, like 15 feet away, and reset all of their Nest cameras to work with the new network. A pain, as they had about 10 of them, and you had to scan each one of the cameras with an app, and then change each of them to the new network. About 1.5 hours just to get that figured out. So needless to say, I did a little extra for no cost as a courtesy. Longer story shorter, they had the system for about 1.5 months before one little thing wouldn't work how they wanted. We never said it would. And they got mad and said we just needed to come get their stuff and that the only time we could come get the stuff was either before 6 a.m. or after 7 p.m. when they close. We agreed, but advised them we would have to charge them an after-hours service call because those were well outside our service times. This went back and forth for about a month until they got their next payment for the equipment auto-deducted from their account because they refused to let us come during normal business hours. At that point, the calls started to get more and more heated until the fabled line in the title happened, and they said I could come the next morning and their manager would be there. So the next morning, I arrived at about 8:30 a.m. after their morning rush and found that their manager wasn't even there yet, and so I advised the employee what I was there to do and how that would affect them and if they would like to call the manager first to confirm I could wait. I'm not a total monster. They called and confirmed what I was there to do, so I started unplugging our stuff. Router, gone. Wireless network, gone. No more network means no more accessing cameras. Phones are VoIP, so they stopped working. It took all of 5 minutes to get our stuff out, and I plugged everything back in how it was before. I was lucky enough to not have any customers come in until after I left. Aftermath. They were down for a day and a half on their internet because they refused to call their ISP to get it configured how it used to be, because that was our job. Which it didn't help that they were the type of place that didn't take cash. How gross. Then they called and said we needed to come hook their cameras back up how they were, and started threatening legal action if we didn't. I finally just took a picture of the form they filled out and highlighted the part they initialed and just started ignoring their calls. I think they finally got the hint and stopped calling. Never heard from a lawyer and found out later that half the staff left because of the owner's attitude towards everything, and since they started using Square again, their credit card fees went back up. Am I the jerk for not wanting to pay for my wife's spending money? Before the birth of our daughter, my wife and I both worked full-time in low-middle earning jobs, with my wife earning a bit more than I, but not by much. My wife returned to work out of necessity when our daughter was 3 months old. Her mental health became pretty bad, and she has a minor disability that makes work life a little hard, and she found it a bit worse after having our daughter, but we had to do what we had to do. My wife's nan, who sort of raised her and was her only family, passed sadly when our daughter was only 6 months old. My wife inherited everything she owned. It was a big inheritance, not enough for us both to immediately retire, but a lot. Enough for us to buy a decent house outright, a new car each, and to put some away for a comfortable retirement. Shortly after her nan passed, my wife stopped working and became a stay-at-home mom.
partially due to grief and struggles at her job, and a bit because she always would have preferred to have stayed home with our daughter. Thing is though, I'd rather not work and be a stay-at-home dad too, but I've been sucking it up because we still need an income to get by. My wife spoke with me recently about how to budget so we can live off just my income. She'd been dipping into savings to pull her weight, but that's all tied up in investments now. I said if I'm the one who has to work, and I'd rather not, I don't think I should have to spend my money funding her hobbies and spending money. If she chooses not to work, then she can buy clothes at the charity shop instead of new and get a friend to cut her hair for free, etc. Or she can get a job working a night shift or start an online business or something to fund her spending money. I don't see why I should have to pay for stuff like her sewing materials and gym membership since I don't benefit from them and they're not my responsibility. I'm happy to pay for stuff for our daughter, seeing as she's my responsibility, so I don't think I'm being unreasonable here. I work 36 hours a week and I already pay for the bills and food. She said that's not fair if I get to enjoy my gym membership and hobbies like video games, but the difference is I'm paying for them with my money. My wife said her inheritance was worth more than if she had spent her whole life working, and without that, both of us would be working anyway and having higher expenses from paying a mortgage and car loans, so I should count that as her contribution and share my money with her. Am I the jerk? You're the jerk. You are aware that the inheritance belonged solely to your wife, right? She didn't have to buy you a house, car, or fund your retirement. You're the jerk. Your wife paid for the house you live in and the car you drive, but you won't give her money to buy clothes or get her haircut? Wow, hypocrite much? For your information, your wife is working. She's taking care of your daughter, and I suspect she's doing all the work to cook and clean and run the household too. And did I mention that she gave you a house to live in and a car to drive? Don't be so cheap that you drive off your wife. When she leaves you, she'll take the rest of her inheritance with her along with your daughter. Am I the jerk for not paying for my daughter's honeymoon after she canceled her wedding? My wife and I have 3 kids, 36, 32, and 25. We've had agreements with all of our kids that we would help pay for up to $10,000 for their weddings, or use that same amount towards a down payment on their first home. Both of our oldest kids picked the down payment option. They both got married and had medium-sized weddings, both under 100 guests. They paid for the majority of their weddings themselves, but we did pitch in maybe $1,000 to $2,000 to each of them to help a bit. My youngest got engaged last year and started planning her wedding, which was scheduled for this October. She told us she would like us to help pay for the wedding instead of a house, since both her and her fiancé are more comfortable with apartment living and don't want to put roots down anywhere since they're both young. She had us put deposits down for a venue, caterer, photographer, and a DJ. These deposits totaled over $5,000 and were non-refundable. About 2 months ago, my daughter called us to tell us that she and her fiancé had decided to cancel their wedding and get married at a courthouse. She said that the wedding planning was too stressful and they would rather just get married legally and spend the money on a big honeymoon instead. She said that she wants us to take the rest of what we would have paid for the wedding and put it towards their honeymoon instead. She said that they want to take an extra long honeymoon, like 2 to 3 months of travel to multiple destinations. I told her that we would not be contributing money to that. I explained that by canceling their wedding, we've lost out on thousands of dollars and gotten nothing out of it due to non-refundable deposits. Mind you, we never questioned any of their choices regarding wedding planning and were not involved in any of the decision-making. I literally just wrote checks to vendors. My daughter is upset and accusing me of playing favorites with her older siblings and for punishing her because she wants something different for herself. I told her that the situations are not the same and that giving her thousands of dollars for her to bum around Europe and Asia for a few months was never something I agreed to. My wife wants to give our daughter a few thousand to try and even things out, but I am firmly against this. The way I look at it, we already gave her thousands of dollars and she decided to literally throw all of that money away. I understand wedding planning is stressful, and if they want a courthouse wedding, that's their choice. But it also wasn't their money that they lost by canceling the wedding. It was ours. My daughter thinks I'm being a jerk about this, and my wife wants to just give her the money to keep the peace. But I feel like that just completely absolves our daughter of what her decisions have cost us. I don't want to pay for her traveling after she cost me thousands of dollars. Not the jerk. But I would encourage you and your wife to inform them that the remaining balance of the money is available to help contribute to a down payment on a home at a future date. This way, you're not playing favorites,
You are not punishing her for changing her mind about the kind of wedding she wants, and you're still only using the money for purposes you are comfortable contributing to. Note, I get that you are annoyed at the loss of non-refundable deposits, but you are skating perilously close to a jerk rating by framing it as, she decided to literally throw all of that money away. And I wouldn't be surprised at all if that attitude is what your wife is reacting to. You are succumbing to the sunk cost fallacy. That money would have been gone no matter whether your daughter went through with the wedding or not. The only thing different is that, by realizing that she didn't want the big wedding, she has stopped spending additional unnecessary money. No, this is not a sunk cost fallacy. So you know for the future, that is when you continue to put resources in something because you have already invested resources into it. Examples: gambling even more money because you've already lost so much and you have to break even. Trying to fix a lemon because you've already bought it 4 times over working on it. Not an example: being upset that your daughter betrayed your trust so you refuse to make special arrangements for her is not a sunk cost fallacy. She threw it all away, literally. You're the jerk. 10,000 to all of the kids but one. And you judge and come here for reinforcements. I hope your wife throws them the remaining $5,000 because it's fair. So you'd cheerfully write $10,000 worth of checks for a wedding celebration. But when your adult daughter and her fiance realize that this wasn't what they wanted, which they couldn't have figured out without going through the experience, you're angry because the money was wasted instead of realizing that you just spent $5,000 for her to learn a valuable life lesson. Oh God, we're not even gonna finish this comment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his daughter? Please let us know. Reading comments on Reddit, the #1 way to lose faith in humanity. Am I the jerk for walking out on a bachelorette party when I'm the maid of honor? I went to a bachelorette party in Atlantic City. After a 4-hour drive, the bride, who we'll call Melissa, could not be bothered to get out of her seat and give me a hug or introduce me to the other girls. No one made any effort to get to know me at dinner. When the bill came, the girls said we'd split it evenly, which was unfair to me because I don't drink alcohol, and they all ordered multiple drinks. There were 11 girls, and I didn't want to be the only one who didn't want to split the bill, so I ended up having to pay $65 for my $13 meal. Then we went to a nightclub. When we got out around 2 a.m., my ears were ringing so much I couldn't sleep that night. Despite not sleeping, I got up early Saturday because we were going to an escape room at noon. I made the entire house breakfast so the girls could eat quickly and we could make it on time, but they overslept and we missed it. Then we got brunch, and the ride over was a nightmare. I should mention I was appointed designated driver. Half the girls took an Uber since my car only seats 5 people, and the other half went with me, including Melissa. It was storming in AC, and the streets were flooded. I'm talking water up to my thighs. I didn't think my old car would make it. The girls could see what kind of car I drive and decided to complain about how they can't file their taxes jointly with their husbands because their combined income would be over $400,000, all while I chauffeured them. Not only was splitting the bill unfair to me because I don't drink, but since I was driving everyone around, I was the only one paying for gas and parking fees. They insisted on splitting the brunch bill too, so I had to pay $45 for my $15 lunch. After the rain stopped, we went to the boardwalk to do a scavenger hunt. Melissa chose the teams, and she didn't even put me on her team. I'm her maid of honor, and yet she didn't want to spend that extra time with her best friend? Then the girls wanted to get drinks on the boardwalk, where I was again excluded from conversation. I was the only quirky girl amongst sorority types. We were scheduled for a booze cruise with an arrival time of 5:30 p.m. So as it started nearing 5, I said we should get going, but the girls wanted to finish their drinks and we had to scramble to get out of there. Again, half the girls took an Uber and the other half went with me, but we couldn't find my car. Melissa started flipping out about missing the cruise, so the girls took an Uber and ditched me in the parking garage. At this point, I broke down and started sobbing. I drove back to the Airbnb, $450 per person, and packed up my stuff. I left around 9 p.m. and drove through the night. No one texted me to see if I made it home. Melissa hasn't talked to me since. I guess she's mad at me for leaving. Am I the jerk for leaving? Did I overreact? I can't have a pay raise, but my work trip hotel bills are paid for? Okay. My first proper job was around 1990 in London, which is famously one of the more expensive cities in the world. My salary was £1,000 per month, easy to remember. I don't know what the national or London average salary for a young graduate was back then, but I was definitely earning at the low end of the pay spectrum, especially because it was work that required some quite specialist skills and a lot of discretion. I can't give details without risking of making myself identifiable, but let's just say that the organization was owned by one of the wealthiest men in England, and my task was politically sensitive, as I had access to private information about some very famous public people. The pay was bad, but I enjoyed the work, and one of its big perks was that I had to go to Paris for about 1 week each month. While I was there, my hotel was paid for automatically, and my meals were reimbursed when I submitted receipts. Anyway, after several months, I felt that I had proven myself to be hardworking, competent, reliable, discreet, etc. So I asked for a raise, explaining that I was finding it hard living in London on my salary. They could not fault my work, but brushed me off with a vague suggestion that maybe we could revisit the question of pay at some unspecified later date. At this time, the place I was living in didn't have a washing machine, which was fine with me, as I didn't want to spend a portion of my meager income on buying one. Plus, there was a laundromat very close by, and I enjoyed reading the newspapers each Sunday morning while my clothes went around and round in soapy circles. Once or twice, though, I had to go to Paris late in the week when I didn't have a lot of clean clothes, so I'd take what clean items I had and get some socks and underwear cleaned by the hotel laundry service after I had worn them. It soon dawned on me that my bosses never queried the extra expenses of laundry. Maybe the hotel just billed them for the total amount of each of my visits without itemizing the details. I don't know, and I didn't ask. Cue the malicious compliance. Apparently, I couldn't have a pay increase, but I could get laundry done at the hotel in Paris. Okay. For the rest of the time I worked in that job, I used to save up all my dirty clothes, including shirts, trousers, etc., and take it with me from London to Paris to have it laundered there. I felt a bit bad about this because hotels always charge exorbitant prices for this service. Washing my clothes was maybe costing an extra £20 each trip I made, but I was saving myself £2 at the laundromat. There was never any fallout as such for the laundry issue. After a year, I told them that I had been offered a paid internship in the USA, and they said they would increase my salary if I stayed working for them in London. But I took great pleasure in telling them that their offer was too little too late, and that I wasn't interested. I won the lottery. Now my mom demands I share my heavenly blessings with my family. I, 23 female, live at home. I finished high school, but I didn't have the marks or the money to go to college. I'm smart. I just spent a lot of my free time helping around the house with my 3 younger siblings. I got a job at the convenience store by my house full-time, and I work with my mom at the local dollar store. I give most of my paycheck to my parents to help with the rent and food. I keep $50 a week to spend on myself, and I save $100 a month for my future. I also buy scratchers. Not a crazy amount. I don't drink or smoke. I don't really have any bad habits, I guess, but I do buy a scratcher every blue moon. My mom says they are a tax on the stupid and against God's word because it's gambling. My dad says if I have money to spend on them, I should be contributing more to the house. My brother is 20 and he has a job, but he doesn't have to contribute because he has a girlfriend and he's saving to pay for their wedding and trailer. I honestly like living at home and seeing my little sister and brother every day. Anyways, I won. Not Powerball money or anything. It's a lottery where you get a certain amount of money every week for 20 years. It's more money every week than I take home in 2 months. I know people who won sometimes lose it all, but I took my time and did some studying at the library. I went to my bank and they helped me get a lawyer, an accountant, and they have set me up with a financial planner. I was going to keep working and giving my parents the money like I always do, and I like working. But my mom found out I had money for some special treats for my little brother and sister. Nothing big, just a Switch and some games. She thought I was wasting my savings and that if I had extra, she could use it better. I don't know why, but I told her that I won the money and now she wants it. It's heavenly bounty and I should give a tithe and offering to the church. I go to church, but I don't think I believe anymore. I haven't for a while. I told her no, and she said I had to move out then, so I did. I went to a hotel. My bank put me in contact with a real estate agent and I'm buying an apartment. Just 1 room, but it's nicer than my house. I'm not working right now because she told everyone. Now everyone is asking for money. But I don't want to give people I barely know money. I've set up an education account for my younger brother and sister, and I set aside $5,000 from my savings to give my other brother when he gets married. But my mom is saying she wants to retire and that I'm being selfish. I don't think I am. Am I the jerk? Attacks on the stupid. Against God's word. Give me that. I want to retire. What you've done for your siblings is perfect. Moving out is perfect. Take care of the things you need and want to care about. Your mother's hypocrisy is not your problem or responsibility. Not the jerk. Be careful with the bank, financial planners, and accountants. Trust no one with your money. Double check all the information, accounts, and books. Stick to your plans. You do not owe anyone anything. Create the trusts for your sibling and have a lawyer make it ironclad your mom cannot get it at all. You will be asked for money to fund business ideas and everything else you can think of for your money. Save all you can, because soon people may start the lawsuits for every little thing which costs money to defend unless you settle out of court, which is what they want. A good lawyer can make them have to pay court costs, saving you a lot of money. Just keep your head up, and you do not need to donate to anything that you don't feel like. It's your money, not your mom's or anyone else's. If you start getting guilted into giving people money, cut them out and move on. Well, what would you do in this situation? Would you give your mom the money she wants or not? Please let us know. Rule number 1 of having lots of money. Never tell anyone you have lots of money. It's always wiser to blend in with those around you than to stick out like a sore thumb and set yourself up to be targeted. Karen and I just might hit a lick on you. Skirt, skirt. Am I the jerk for bringing my sister-in-law's wallet to the restaurant when she conveniently always forgets it? I'm 28, female. My sister-in-law, Amy, who's 26, always comes to visit from out of town. She stays with us instead of a hotel and always wants to go to expensive restaurants. She always conveniently forgets her wallet or comes up with some excuses as to why she can't pay her share. She has implied that since I make much more money than her, I should be the one to pay. No, not my husband should pay, but me specifically. I do make a fair amount of money, but not so much that I can treat someone every time they come into town. Nonetheless, in the past, I've just paid the bill and asked her to pay me back. She never has. She had made a reservation at an extremely expensive restaurant last night, and before we left, I made it clear that I wouldn't be paying her bill. This is where I might be the jerk, and I'll admit I got this move straight from an episode of 2.5 Men. As we were leaving, her and my husband went to the car. I pretended I forgot something and went back inside. I found her wallet sitting right on top of her suitcase. I put it in my purse and we went to the restaurant. When we were done eating, I asked for separate bills. She said, no, we need one bill because she forgot her wallet again. I reached in my purse and said, this wallet? She was extremely furious. She said that I should not have touched or grabbed her wallet. So, am I the jerk for taking her wallet and bringing it to the restaurant? Edit. Amy just called me. She saw this post and she yelled at me for bad-mouthing her on the internet. Honestly, I don't care. Amy, hopefully reading all these comments is a wake-up call for you. Some answers to common questions. Why does my husband keep letting Amy come over? Without getting into too much detail, he has always been expected to pay for nice things for the women in his family. He's also kind of been scammed out of large sums of money by his family. That's slowly been shut down over time, but we're working on shutting down these dinner and outing things too. He allows this because he feels bad that they don't have a lot of money. It's sad, but that's how his family got along for a very long time, being dishonest about anything and everything to get their hands on some extra money and extra financial help. I could write a book on some of the things I've seen them do over the years. It hasn't been easy to show these people how wrong this is. He has talked to Amy about being cheap, has had come-to-Jesus talks with her, and genuinely has always felt that each next time would be different. We've been in therapy addressing this, and he's learned to set boundaries. This restaurant thing is a boundary that he hadn't set yet. It's hard to set all boundaries all at once when you actually had no clue what boundaries were and have had no boundaries for years. Does he pay too? We're married. My money is his money. When I mentioned Amy specifies I should pay, I meant more that she specifies since I make good money, we as a whole shouldn't be cheap. What was the point if you ended up paying? I knew Amy wasn't going to pay. She always finds a way not to pay. I went to the restaurant fully expecting to pay the bill. I did this because I saw it on a show and I thought it would be funny to do in real life, to be completely honest. The point wasn't really to get her to pay, it was more to show her that the forgot my wallet excuse was getting old. Is Amy banned from visiting? Fortunately, this post turned out to be a good thing.
My husband has always had it in his head that Amy is a good person and has her reasons for being sneaky and cheap, like I mentioned above. In his head, it's not her fault that she is the way she is. It's the circumstances of their upbringing that cause her to make bad decisions. But seeing Amy's reply to my post and people's responses to Amy has really changed his thinking. That's the first time Amy has outright admitted that she's purposely taking advantage. Reading some of the other comments has also been eye-opening for him. So husband told Amy that she's not welcome here, at least not for a long while. Judgment. Thanks for lots of not the jerks, but I liked one commenter's, "Sometimes it's okay to be the jerk." I think that's exactly what it was here. It was a jerk move, but also outweighed by Amy's being a jerk. Thanks again, this is the end of this. I won't be giving any more updates or comments. Not the jerk, but you totally should have flipped the switch. Left your wallet at home, only brought your license, so she had to cover the whole bill, then never take her out to a restaurant again. Not the jerk. That was a boss move. But if you want to keep it up without getting accused of touching her things, when you're in the car, don't let your husband start driving until she shows you that she has her wallet on her. You told her right up front, "I'm not paying this time," and she tried to push you into it. Honestly, I don't know why you keep going out with her. Cancel, or insist your husband pays. Like, what does he say about all of this? Because he needs to have a chat with his sister about how she's taking advantage of your generosity. Next time she stays and says there's a reservation, "Oh, hey, I hope you guys have a nice time. Yeah, I'm not going. I'm getting tired of you continuously trying to do me over." ETA. In regards to OP's edit, Amy, your sister-in-law couldn't badmouth you if you didn't give her plenty of ammo. You're saying she's badmouthing you? She's just telling people what you did. If you feel some kind of way about it, that means you're aware that you done messed up. Stop being mad at other people for reacting to your bad behavior. Change your bad behavior. Grow as a person. Usually, I'm against people touching other people's property, but in this case, well done. Be aware that next time she will be hiding her wallet, but maybe just refuse to go out to dinner if she doesn't bring her wallet or card. Let her know if she doesn't pay, she will not be going out with you and your husband, and make it clear that your hospitality is a courtesy, not an obligation. She's very welcome to stay in a hotel next time if she doesn't abide by the rules and respects you. Your husband's family might start harassing you after you establish the rules, so might be worth having a dialogue with your husband and having him be the bad cop. If the family complains, tell them that they are welcome to pay your sister-in-law's expenses, including past dinners if you have the receipts or bank statements. I got here late, and everyone is saying you rock, what a power move, awesome idea, etc. This is one of those votes that leaves me hanging my head in despair. You went into someone's deeply personal property. This is absolutely the wrong thing to do. Two wrongs don't make a right. Is there any situation that you would be okay with someone not in your immediate family taking your wallet out with them and then spending your money on something? I will concede that the ongoing behavior of Amy is egregiously awful, but not sure this isn't worse. The only saving grace in my eyes is that more appropriate responses might have been triggering or challenging for your husband to deal with. Everyone sucks here. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Amy? Please let us know. Oh, I can't stand freeloaders. You know what else I can't stand, Reddit boy? People who watch our videos but don't even click the thumbs up. Whoa, easy there, Karen. It takes a fair amount of effort to, tap that button with your thumb. Who's going to pay for your daughter's summer camp? We do, with pleasure. I was a Girl Guides leader for ages 10 through 13, and it was time for the kids to tell us if they would be going on the annual summer camp or not. We needed that info to plan ahead. So one of our weekly meetings, I asked around who would go and who would definitely not. Cora, one of our older ones, told me that nope, she wouldn't go with us. Cora was a determined guide, came to every event, so I was surprised and asked her why. She explained to me that her parents were divorcing and both parents stated that they would not pay and the other one should pay. What I knew, every Scouts group here has a fund for the kids whose parents might not be able to pay for summer camp, etc. The kids I was looking after usually had rich parents. Cora's parents were a lawyer and a doctor. The money was not an issue. Pride was. I decided to take them up on that pride. So I went to the chief of the group and told her what was happening. Cora wanted to go to summer camp. Her parents were fighting about payment. Did we have the funds to finance that trip for her in principle? And I did get the go. So I first called the mother and told her that Cora told me about the situation and that I perfectly understood the conflict. However, Cora was a girl guide to the bones. She wanted to go on the camp, and we,
the group would make that possible if they allowed. That we had those funds for the financially challenged ones, that I had asked the responsible person, and that no matter what, the money for her to go to that camp was there. That I knew finances were not the issue, but that Cora deserved those 2 weeks, and until this conflict was solved, that we didn't care of her background, we'd front that money. We just wanted her to be able to participate because she was a good guide, and that we didn't want to take that experience from her. Good news, yay. I hung up, dialed her dad's number, and told him the same. At the next week's meeting, I told Cora the good news, that no matter what, she could join us. She told me that this wasn't an issue anymore. She had come for sure. Now her parents were fighting over who would be the first one to pay. I pay. No, I pay. Those 2 words, financially challenged, were the key words that hurt them. I'm not a manipulative person. I could, but I have a strong dislike of it. However, if you tell me that nobody's going to pay for your daughter's summer camp, I'll gladly comply. Gates are open. Please come in. Am I the jerk for wanting my parents in town, but not at my house while I'm adjusting to life with a newborn? I, 24 female, am currently pregnant, due in December. I live with my fiance, Dan, in the town where I grew up. I have a great relationship with my parents, but they had me quite late in life and they're both retired now, living in a beach town in the south. When they moved out, they sold me the house I grew up in well below market value in exchange for me hosting them when they needed or wanted to come into town. It's been like that for 2 years. They've been here a bunch of times for 3 to 4 days at a time, and it's been a good arrangement, I think. Now, yesterday, I was talking to my mom about the birth, and I brought up that I would like for her to be in town when I give birth and to stay for a few weeks after. Dan has no relationship with his family, and I'm an only child, with only a couple of very elderly aunts and a few cousins I don't have much of a relationship with, so we don't really have much in terms of a support system. Therefore, I'd love for my parents to come here and help around the house, with the baby, offer me the emotional support I know I'm going to need, etc. My mom was excited that I was asking her to do this and said that she'd be okay with staying with us for a few weeks while we adjusted to the baby. I then told her that I didn't mean her staying with us, just in town, as I believe Dan and I are going to need and want alone time to adjust to the baby. My mom was a little offended, saying that she wasn't going to bother us and she was going to help out. But I told her it was nothing personal. I just preferred if she got a hotel or Airbnb or something. My father then intervened, having been somewhere within the earshot, and said that accommodation was going to be really expensive around that time of the year. Our town has a very famous big Christmas market, and he wasn't about to spend thousands of dollars when I was asking them to come, and it had been our arrangement when they sold me the house that they could stay whenever they wanted. Which, like, fair, but I don't think that having a newborn at home is just a regular time in someone's life, and it's not like I ever complained about them coming over before. I just don't want them in the house, but I do want to have them in town, and I feel a little sad that they are putting money above me and their grandson. My mother hung up the call, trying to appease the situation, but then sent me a text saying that her and my dad were a little upset over the whole thing and that they thought I was being unreasonable. When Dan got home, I told him all of this, and he kind of sided with them, saying that they should be allowed to stay with us, but I still don't think it makes sense, as we're going to be needing our alone time. Was I the jerk here? Yep, you're the jerk. You asked them to come. It's not like it was them imposing on you right after you gave birth. You knew before you asked that the arrangement you have with them is that they stay in your home. It's a lot to ask that they come and spend thousands on lodging so they can come help you clean your house and care for your baby. The baby isn't born yet. You have time. Figure out a way that you and your husband can have alone time while still hosting your parents. They sound like good people. Just explain it to them. I would guess husband will be at work at some point over those weeks, so ask them if they would be okay making themselves scarce a few evenings a week so that you, your husband, and baby can have time together. They can go out to dinner together or just retreat to their room after dinner, assuming you have a guest room for them. You're the jerk. Either let them stay at your house or you pay for their hotel, Airbnb, or whatever yourself, or don't expect them to visit. They're doing you a favor. A second favor, since they already sold you their house at well below market value in exchange for you letting them stay there when they visit. I'm not saying you're a jerk for not wanting house guests when you have a new baby. I just think that you can't demand that they visit for an extended period to help you, but insist that they pay their own way. You're the jerk. Look, I'm all for not hosting people right after having a baby. That's totally reasonable. What is unreasonable is to expect your parents to come into town for a month, do chores for you, and foot the bill for a hotel. That's not a visit, it's a maid service. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her parents? Please let us know. I can't fathom how anyone would expect their parents to spend thousands of dollars on lodging to come visit them for a month. This is crazy. I just can't. My coworker took a long break and said she didn't care if I did the same. So I did. Many years ago, I worked at a gas station. It wasn't a big fancy gas station. No, it was a satellite of a grocery store. Nothing more than a tiny kiosk next to a dozen pumps. I have a lot of stories about that place, but only one is really appropriate for this sub. My coworkers ranged from cool to worthless. This story is about one of the worthless ones. Let's call her Sandy. Sandy was fairly new to our kiosk, but not to the job, having transferred over from another gas station in the company. Right out of the gate, this was a problem. She had her way of doing things and we had ours. Naturally, Sandy expected all of her new coworkers to change to suit her, not the other way around. One day it was me and Sandy on the afternoon shift. There were only ever 2 employees, only enough space for 2 people in that shack of a gas station, so we covered each other's breaks. Normally, because I'm a team player, I would take my breaks in the little office in the back. If my coworkers needed me, all they had to do was yell. But on that particular Friday, Sandy and I had a problem. She decided to take both of her breaks at once. It wasn't uncommon for us to take a 45-minute break instead of a half and a 15, but it was something we had to clear with our coworkers before doing. It was also against company policy, but we didn't really care about that. An hour before rush hour, the busiest time of the day with the largest concentration of bad customers, she wanted to take her break. That's fine. Nothing wrong. I told her I would take my half hour after hers. Then we had both run tills for the rush. Half an hour came and went. She didn't come back. Another half hour during which I should have been on break. Still not back. Another 15 minutes. She comes in and gets on till. No apologies for taking a long break unannounced or for coming back late from that long break. When I mentioned it, she replied, "I don't know why you're getting so upset. All you ever do is sit in the back, and I wouldn't get upset with you if you took a long break." So I told her, "I'll hold you to that." Then I walked out. I bought a paper, went down the street to Edo, sat down with a big bowl of noodles and veggies, and took my sweet time. All the 9-to-5ers on their way home from work were her problem. Exactly 45 minutes after I left, I made darn sure it was to the minute. I walked back into the kiosk. Sandy was not behind the till. My manager was. Apparently, Sandy couldn't handle the situation and started crying. I don't know if it was just me walking out, the workload, or any particular customer that got to her. My manager was called, drove into town, and took over until I came back. Let's call her Tam. Tam wasn't angry with me. Not anymore, at least. She was pretty upset when she showed up to relieve Sandy. Poor girl had to be sent home, but she had found a brief window in which to check the security cameras. It turns out, Sandy told her that she had taken her half-hour break earlier. Then I didn't bother taking mine until the rush because I didn't want to work. Tam decided to check that on the cameras, and by the time I came back, she already knew Sandy was lying to her. I didn't have to say a darn thing in my own defense. Sandy was punished for the long break and the lying, but was not fired. However, on the rare occasion we were scheduled together afterwards, she took her breaks when and for how long I told her to. Good times. Am I the jerk for telling my mom I won't talk to my half-siblings until they can apologize? I, 19 female, lost my dad when I was 6. My mom and him didn't have the best marriage, so she was dating again 6 months after he passed and met her current husband 11 months after his passing. She introduced him to me right away, and she did ask me how I felt and wanted to know how I was doing, but nothing I said really made a difference to the pace of their relationship. They started having babies right away and have 6 kids together, ranging from the age of 11 down to 4. The biggest problem here is with the 11, the 10, and the 9-year-olds. They're kids, so again, I could be a huge jerk, but here goes. Around 3 years ago, the 3 half-siblings I mentioned started telling me to call their dad, Dad. That's what it started with. He's not Jim, he's Dad, that kind of thing. I explained to them that he was their dad, but not my dad, and I showed them photos of my dad. After a while of that, they told me it was mean to not let him be my dad though, since he was the best one and he wanted to be my dad too. I told them that didn't change who my dad was. I asked them how they would feel if he had passed and Mom brought home a new dad. They told me that wouldn't happen and that was wrong or different and all kinds of stuff. I had brought it up to Mom and to their dad. Mom told me she talked to them a few times, but they continued coming to me. When we had a virtual graduation party for me last year, my then 10-year-old half-sister, now the 11-year-old, corrected me in front of everyone for saying how I was sad Dad had missed this part of my life. She told me that he didn't miss it, he was right here. My mom tried to shush her, but she shut me down a second time. Other stuff has happened in between, and then 2 months ago, I was briefly home for a week, and during that time, they were going crazy on the correcting me, even had the younger ones copying them. And then they told me that they were glad that he's gone, and that he wasn't important and he was dumb. I was dumb for missing him and not adopting their dad. Some of what they said felt very mature, and like something someone else had said. But then they just kept repeating over and over that they were glad my dad was gone, and it made them happy. I used to call home to talk to them a few times a month, and now I haven't, and my mom called to get me to. But I told her I won't talk to them until I get a real apology and until their behavior changes. She told me I need to be an understanding adult about this. I told her no. I told her the fastest way for me to never have anything to do with them again is to hear over a long period of time that they're glad my dad is gone and that he doesn't matter. She told me even then it would be extreme. I told her I don't love them more than my dad, and hearing them talk like that about him would fracture our relationship beyond repair. I told her 3 years of dealing with this stuff for it to get worse is too much. She and her husband called me out for being wrong about this, so I'm here to ask, am I the jerk? ETA. Jim has, over the course of the time that I've known him, tried to get me to call him Dad. He pushed it a few times over the years, but would bring it up regularly, but I never wanted to. He will never be my father. I don't ever see the day where I love him either. I've had issues with him because of how often he brought it up and the pushing, but there's no fixing that now. Not the jerk, but your mom and Jeff sure are for not nipping this in the bud when it started. Saying they're just kids only means they'll grow up thinking this kind of harassing is okay. Likely because at least Jim is behind this, and either the mother knows and has done nothing or she's behind it as well. The kids don't come to this conclusion on their own. While kids are a lot more switched on than we often give them credit for, this is straight up manipulation from a parent. Given her mother is trying to get OP to be a doormat under the guise of being the adult, she's trying to manipulate OP so the mother can go back to getting what she wants and ignoring OP's emotional needs. All frankly points to the mother being as guilty as Jeff. Air Force commander makes a dumb policy. We all follow it to the letter out of spite. While I was in the Air Force, we had a commander that was all about looking great to the public and nothing else. He didn't care for morale, personal time, or his troops in any way, shape, or form. In fact, he became our commander as a punishment when he was caught hooking up with a deployed enlisted member's wife. He came from a family of a few 2- and 3-star generals, and because he got in trouble, he was forced to command our bad squadron with a forced retirement at lieutenant colonel after 2 years. So basically, he couldn't stand us, and we couldn't stand him the moment we saw each other. We knew how he got in trouble before he got to us, and we didn't take too kindly to it. For context, I was security forces, police, and part of our job is manning the gates and checking IDs for people coming in. There was always a morning rush from everyone coming into work at the same time that would cause traffic to back up. We would do things to try to get the cars moving faster, but no matter what we did, it was always a problem. And of course, it was always the new airman's fault that everyone starts work at the same time, so the gate guards always got yelled at a lot. Well, our fearless commander thought it would be a great idea if we said a prepared speech to everyone when they came in to show how disciplined we are. The speech went as follows. Hello, driver's rank and name. Welcome to installation name, home of the aircraft the installation was known for, and the home of our squadron name. Your ID will expire on this date. Your vehicle's registration will expire on this date. I authorize you to enter installation. Have a great Air Force Day. Obviously, everyone besides the leadership knew this was the dumbest thing ever, but the commander said we have to do it, so we have to do it. The young airmen were complaining about it when we all got on the same page at the same time. We decided that we were going to say the whole speech as slowly and clearly as possible to make sure everyone heard us, and we would do this to every single car with no exception. If the car had a passenger, we would repeat the speech with their information after doing it to the driver. If there was another passenger in the back, we would repeat it again. When our own chain of command would drive through, they would try to stop us from saying it, but we would keep their ID until we were done. Morning traffic went from being 2 hours long to 4 hours because of how long it took to get in, and created a lunch rush that never existed before. Many times we were yelled at about how long it took. We were making everyone late to work and how much they couldn't stand that speech. So we would tell them this is per our commander's request and his office phone number is public if you would like to talk to him about it. The traffic got so backed up, the local police had to direct traffic outside the base as the line of cars grew to a mile or two long. This lasted 3 days before the chief of police for the local city and our base commander let our commander know how they really felt about it. When we were told we no longer had to do it, our shift supervisor told us he had never been so proud of us. Having the second highest ranking person on that base tell me to my face, "That speech was so dumb. Never say that again," as he drove off is the highlight of my Air Force career. Am I the jerk for setting an 11 p.m. curfew on my husband? I know. He's a grown man, but let me explain. We have a 4-month-old together, and not once has he helped out beyond changing a diaper maybe once a week. I do all of the cooking, cleaning, and 99% of the baby care has been on me. I've asked him to take an overnight shift before, but he snapped back at me saying, "I work, so I need my sleep so I can put food on the table for you." To be honest, that stung, but I dropped it after that. Anyway, weekdays he works all day and he's so exhausted when he comes home, he only wants to hang out or play games with his brothers and drink beer. I tell him I appreciate him working so I can take care of our son and go to school. I cook, I clean, and I do his laundry so he can just rest. Weekends he doesn't work, so I feel like he can help out a little more. On top of being a full-time mom, I'm also finishing up my final semester in college. So on weekends, he had agreed to watch the baby for at least an hour so I can submit assignments on time, which is usually the Sunday at 11:59 kind of deal. Or let me take a shower, since the kid is glued to my hip the rest of the day. Hence the 11 p.m. curfew. So I have an hour to do my timed exams, which is just enough time for me to complete. He has yet to respect the agreed upon time for him to come home, so not only can I shower and get schoolwork done, we can spend quality time as husband and wife since he's busy all week and goes out every weekend. When he told his brothers and coworkers about his curfew, I was immediately labeled as a controlling, nagging jerk wife, and it hurt. I don't argue with him, and my requests are asked in a calm and collected manner. I have an exam due on Sunday. Can you make some time to help me so I can knock it out? I guess if you're not there, it's easy to assume. Despite that, he won't come home on weekends until 1 or 2 a.m., ignoring my text when I remind him of my timed exams and homework. Then he snaps at me because I don't let him reward himself for working all week. I'm really hurt at the name calling. I pride myself in being laid back, flexible, and understanding. Am I the jerk here? Should I just forget about the curfew? Edit, just so I'm not repeating myself. English is not my first language. I didn't realize until now that the word curfew has a negative meaning behind it. I didn't mean to belittle him. That's on me. Also, thanks for all of the support. I didn't expect that. I'm definitely looking around into finding a good counselor for us. I've already called our insurance and got a list of names. We had a solid marriage before the baby. If we can work it out, I'd like to do that. Until then, I'm looking into a local mom group to get some support until I finish college, or the counseling works and my husband steps up. Update. So many of you have been so supportive of me and I can't thank you enough for it. Even though you're strangers on Reddit, it means a lot to me to be cheered on to continue my education and caring for my son. For info, my husband wasn't always like this. 8 years together and he always helped me somehow. Chores, encouraging me to change my degree at the age of 24 because I was just miserable, supporting me when my best friend backstabbed me, staying up all night and taking 8 days off work when I miscarried for our first so that he could take care of me. You guys helped me realize these red flags and the courage to realize I need to put my foot down. Being laid back isn't going to save our marriage. New neighbor is demanding I buy her groceries for her family. We just had a woman who's in her mid-20s and her daughter who's 9 move into the apartment across the hall from us. The day that they moved in, she got on Nextdoor, Facebook Marketplace, and really any other neighborhood buy, sell, giveaway group asking for furniture, baby supplies, she's pregnant, and clothes and toys for her daughter. Her daughter went to the same summer camp as my kids,
who are 9 and 11. And after she started there, they conveniently had a food drive for the disadvantaged campers. My kids have been going there since they were 3, and they've never had a food drive before. Then when school started, she got on the parents' groups and asked if anyone would be able to drive her daughter home from school and watch her for an hour until she gets home. No pay was mentioned. My husband pressured me to say yes because she's friends with our girls and she's in the same class as our younger daughter, so they can do their homework together. That hour turned into 2, and she started having dinner with us almost every night. Then the girl told my husband she doesn't think her mom is eating when she has dinner with us. That day, we had a lasagna big enough to feed all of us twice, and he sent the leftovers home with her. Then he started to send all of our leftovers home with her, along with clothes our daughter grew out of, toys they don't want anymore, and he started to buy extra groceries just for them. He didn't get anything expensive, just things like eggs, milk, store-brand cereal, fruits and vegetables, and sometimes meat. It started adding up to an extra $40 to $50 a week just for them. He also started helping them around the house. I eventually told him to stop sending the leftovers home with them because I take them for lunch and sometimes the kids also take them. So not having the leftovers is costing us extra money. Plus, the $40 to $50 a week should be spent on our family, not the woman across the hall. He said we can afford it and they need it much more than we do. And I said we already do more than enough for them, acting as a free daycare for her and giving her daughter dinner 5 days a week. He called me selfish, jealous, and cruel. So now I want to know if I'm the jerk. Not the jerk. And I would tell him this. When he is the one providing the free daycare, buying, as in going to the store and actually getting the extra groceries, cooking the extra food, and having to prepare the extra lunches because of no leftovers, then and only then can he call anyone else selfish. It's all fine and good for him to feel good about himself for what you are providing? Nah, he gets no credit for that morally or otherwise. OP. He does the grocery shopping and we take turns on lunches, but he doesn't think it's a big deal. He says microwaving some chicken nuggets and sticking them in a thermos isn't any different than microwaving some leftovers and putting them in the thermos. But there is a difference because now we go through chicken nuggets, bread, lunch, and meat much faster. You mentioned that he's also doing some sort of handyman things over at her place. He's defensive about providing for her. Just be wary that all his intentions are purely charitable. I gotta chime in. Something similar happened to my coworker. Her husband was friends with the neighbor's husband. Neighbor's husband passed in an accident, and husband started helping out the widow with handyman projects, lawn care, etc. 18 months later, husband comes home, says that he's in love with the widow and she's pregnant with his baby. If she's a single mother, she should be able to get food assistance and maybe even some type of assistance check. My sister is 52. My nephew is 20. They both work and get SNAP benefits. No disabilities or health problems. Not the jerk. I'm with you. You guys are already watching your kid for free and feeding her, which is super generous. The extra groceries aren't extravagant, but your kid also needs a college fund that money could be going into. How has this woman thanked you for this free service you're offering her? Has she helped out around your place or expressed extreme gratitude towards you? Has she watched your kid in return when she's available? The pressure from your husband to put food on their table seems strange. Is this in character for him? Does he often take in strays? Or is this out of character? The accusation that you're jealous seems particularly strange coming from your husband. I'd be curious if your husband is attracted to this neighbor or if there's something going on there. Who's the father of the woman's current bun in the oven? OP. She has thanked my husband. She doesn't talk to me anymore because her kid told her I don't like them, even though I never said anything about not liking them. And she baked cookies for us once and made some toys for our daughter once or twice, but that's about it. Wait, so this woman doesn't even talk to you? You watch her kid for free and she refuses to speak to you? Why does your husband think you're jealous of her? Any chance your husband is hooking up with her? OP. All communication with her is through my husband. I don't know. He calls me jealous every time I complain about him buying her groceries or helping around the apartment. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her husband? Please let us know. It sounds like he's definitely using some equipment over there. Am I the jerk for publicly humiliating my mom? I'm 24, female, and I have a half-brother, Ethan, who's 17. When I was 16, our mother married her new husband and has 2 kids with him. Ethan's father isn't in his life, so he stays with them full-time, but I spend more time with my dad and his family because I just get along with them better. I love my mom, but she can be a bit much sometimes, so I rarely see her.
Ethan and I text occasionally. It was my mother's birthday a few days ago, and I was visiting, and I noticed that Ethan and my newborn half-sibling weren't around. I asked my mom where they were at, and she said that she asked Ethan to check up on the baby while she took a break. We were all in the backyard, by the way, which is massive. But yeah, okay, no biggie. But some time later, I still couldn't find him, and so I went to Ethan's room, and he's rocking the baby while she's inconsolable, and he's crying too because she won't stop crying. There were diapers and baby formula everywhere, and he was saying that he tried everything, but she just won't stop. I managed to calm them both down somehow and asked Ethan why he didn't just call someone for help. He said that he's usually really good at this, and his mom makes him take care of the baby all the time, so he just panicked. He then told me that he helped out with our other half-sister when she was a baby as well, and still takes care of her too. I was really upset. I mean, yes, there's nothing wrong with needing to take a break, but Ethan's a 17-year-old. He's not the father or a mother, but apparently he takes care of our half-siblings more than our mom and stepdad? I walked up to my mom while she was talking to a group of people, and I basically told her that I can't believe she's dumping all her responsibilities onto Ethan. She knew what I was talking about immediately and told me to relax and that Ethan likes it, blah blah blah. I told her that while she was out here having a blast, her son was crying in his room because of how overwhelmed he was. She got really red and everyone went silent, which was awkward, but yeah. I later got a call from my mom saying that she respects my opinions on the situation, but that I didn't need to publicly humiliate her in front of her friends and coworkers. Apparently, her boss was there too, and he's being very cold to her. I don't know. I just can't get Ethan out of my head. Am I the jerk? You didn't humiliate her in front of people. Her own behavior humiliated her in front of people, and now she's transferring the blame to you. If she had done nothing wrong, why would she be embarrassed by what you said? Not the jerk. Not the jerk. Hate to say it, but public humiliation is a good driver for change. Mom is not God. The earth is full of bad people, and a good amount of them are moms. I would, however, suggest that you follow up with him to make sure she didn't retaliate against him. Not the jerk. Good on you for defending your half-brother. Being forced into a parental role, even if he, in part, likes it, isn't okay. He's at a point where he feels like he can't ask for help from the baby's actual parents. That is a huge problem. Calling her out in public may not have been the most kind thing to do, but it forces your mom to actually address the problem because now other people know about it. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her mom? Please let us know.
You think that's bad? I would have walked right up to her, let one rip, and started barking like a chihuahua.
Why does that not surprise me? Can't do anything without a medical reason. A few years ago, I worked under a terrible boss, whom I shall call Tiff. Unfortunately, I'm not exaggerating when I say terrible. She had HIPAA violations on record, writing people up for stuff that she told them to do, writing them up for things that happened when they weren't there, changing people's schedules with no notice, and then getting them in trouble when they didn't show up for the changed schedule, trying to write people up for using FMLA, the general yelling and petty bullying bad managers do, the works. Senior management knew about all of this, and they aided and abetted her. Anyways, after being hauled into a meeting with her and a senior manager where she lied about me and did her best to paint me as a lazy and generally terrible worker, I'd had enough. I went to the other senior manager, who shall be called Spineless for reasons you can probably guess, and told him that I couldn't deal with this anymore and I had to be transferred to another department in the store. I had experience in a few other areas which were in high demand, so it wouldn't be hard to find a place for me. It would just be hard to fill my spot in the bakery, especially given that it was late in the year and we were always incredibly busy over the holidays. Spineless said no. Well, actually, he said that he'd see what he could do, but it wasn't likely to happen because I was too important to the bakery to lose. I pointed out that it was so stressful that it was affecting my health and I really couldn't continue. If I had to, I was going to be calling out. He still said no.
We can't do anything unless you have a medical reason.
Now see, I knew what he actually meant was that there was no way they were actually doing anything, so I should just shut up about it already. Unfortunately for him, I don't like subtexts like that, and I didn't feel like dealing with the mistreatment anymore. So I sat there for a moment, debating, and decided to give him what he said he needed. See, I have a few medical issues that are annoying, but unless they actually keep me from doing my work, I think it's kind of a cop-out to bring them up. But under the circumstances, management was being completely unreasonable, so cop-outs it was. So I explained that I had an official diagnosis of anxiety,
and due to reasons above, I couldn't work under her. Spineless kind of stopped and looked at me, then said,
Okay. We'll see what we can do, but we'll need you to at least get through the holidays.
I told him I would do my best, but I couldn't handle the constant threats of write-ups, so he would have to keep her from enacting any disciplinary measures against me. He said, sure. I also added that I really didn't want anyone else to know about my anxiety, as I don't like my personal life being spread about. About a month later, something else happens where a bunch of cakes were ruined and I was the last one who touched it. They were someone else's responsibility as soon as I was done with them. The other person just hadn't done their part, and Tiff was trying to get me in trouble however she could. Tiff hands me a write-up to sign. I'm furious, but I carefully write down in the comments section that I have a medical condition interfering with my work, which I had already notified senior management of. Then I insist on having her give me a photocopy of it, which they're supposed to do but often don't. I heard from the supervisor, who was also present, that when she saw what I had written, Tiff had an appropriately shocked Pikachu face and asked if supervisor had known anything about my mysterious medical issue. For once, Spineless had followed directions and not shared my private information with the world. I probably should have just escalated to corporate at this point, but I ended up not. Just wrote a nicely worded letter about how I had requested ADA accommodations because anxiety technically can count as a disability. I had already looked it up. And they had done nothing about it. Stuck copies of the letter along with a write-up and a note from my doctor in Spineless mailbox and in the store manager's mailbox. I should probably point out that by this point, about 4 other people had left the bakery due to medical conditions which were directly related to Tiff. They were legit medical reasons, but either exacerbated by her or used as an excuse to get away from her. So I certainly wasn't the first person to do this. Lo and behold, when you stuff enough legal terms along with relevant meeting recaps and dates into a letter, people do something about it. I had meetings with both the store manager, who insisted he had heard nothing about this, and Spineless, and they offered to get me out immediately, but asked if there was any possible way for me to stay through Christmas, which was about 2 weeks away. I didn't really want to be working a different area when everyone else was already crazy busy with no time to catch me up. So I agreed under the condition that they changed my schedule so that I was not scheduled with Tiff at any point in time. And what do you know? They got me out right after Christmas. So yeah, ask and you shall receive, jerks. Hilarious enough, come February, Tiff went on vacation and the bakery supervisor asked me if there was any way I could come back to help cover, which of course I could do. Figured I might as well stick it in their face that the manager was the problem, not the department. Sadly, they didn't do anything about her until she transferred to a different store where she is no doubt still wreaking havoc. But I escaped with my sanity mostly intact, so it was a win for me. Edit. I was told by someone I should expect to know that it's a HIPAA violation when managers gossip and spread information about a medical issue only revealed to them due to an ADA request and/or discovered through the employee healthcare plan. I certainly could be wrong, but I know that it was a big enough issue that management from top down got a reprimand from corporate. Wouldn't it be nice if employees could team up and vote their boss out of their position? Am I the jerk for calling my niece a spoiled brat and making her cry? I'm 22, female. My sister, who's 28, recently had to move in with me because she's getting a divorce and has nowhere else to stay. She has a daughter who's 7. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment, so it's cramped and tensions are high. My niece is terrible, to be honest. She screams all day long at the top of her lungs. I work from home, so I've tried to get my sister to get her to stop, but she's so depressed from her divorce that she struggles to get out of bed. I've asked my niece to quiet down myself, but she just smirks at me and continues playing and screeching. I've gotten reprimanded at work for it. She also recently broke my laptop. I made it clear to both of them that my niece is not allowed to use my electronics minus the living room TV. Lo and behold, niece got her hands on my laptop to play games on it, spilled milk all over it, and ruined it. I was furious, but my sister paid to replace it, so I let it go. I've tried many times to talk to my sister about this being unacceptable, but I keep getting blown off and told to let her grieve in peace. I do feel bad for her, so I was doing my best to just put up with it. Today I came home from errands to find my niece playing on my Nintendo Switch. Mind you, this was kept in my room, so she must have gone in there and looked for it. Annoyed, I held my hand out and told her to give it over. She ignored me. I called for my sister to take care of her daughter, but she was asleep and told me to leave her alone. So I just grabbed the Switch right from my niece's hands and took it back to my room. She started screaming and crying and literally rolling on the floor, but I ignored her. Well, she decided that was just not acceptable, so she took a Sharpie and drew all over the living room wall. When I saw it, I freaked out. I told her she's a spoiled little brat. She started screaming and crying even worse, which finally woke my sister up. She came out, and instead of being angry and scolding her for her behavior, she scolded me for yelling at her and calling her a spoiled brat. Not my proudest moment, but I yelled at my sister that I was being kind by letting them stay with me rent-free. I was being treated like absolute dirt in return. She wasn't parenting her kid, and I wasn't going to parent her kid for her, so she needed to get her act together and get her daughter under control, or they could find somewhere else to stay. Her daughter was not only getting me in trouble at my job, but she had no respect for my personal belongings, and now I was probably going to lose my security deposit because she doesn't accept the word no. My sister started crying, calling me a jerk, and she and my niece haven't come out of their room. I feel bad now. Am I the jerk? Edit, clarification. Prior to this incident, I have not raised my voice at my niece a single time. I've tried to have talks with her about respecting my home and my things, but she couldn't care less. She also laughed when I cried over my broken laptop. Even then, I did not say a single word to her. I talked to my sister. I have tried to have conversations with my sister about my niece's behavior, only to be guilted and told she was going through a hard time. Niece has always been like this even before the divorce, so I'm sure such a devastating life event has made things even worse for her. I'm going to set a date for them to leave once things calm down a bit. I will also talk to my sister about therapy for the both of them. Not the jerk. Pack up their things and tell them to find another place, then get out. Tell the princess that she's not the first to go through a divorce and won't be the last. Not the jerk. Let them sulk in the one room. Solves a lot of your problems. Her grief over her divorce doesn't absolve her from being a parent. She needs to get her act together. Not the jerk. Don't wait too long to make her leave. Right now you're risking your job and apartment. I'm sure your neighbors aren't too happy about the screaming. Now the niece is damaging your property and apartment, costing you money. Your sister needs a wake-up call to get her and her daughter help, but you can't be expected to destroy your own life because of her divorce. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for how they handled this or not? Please let us know. Yowza! With a brat like that, no wonder hubby bounced. Oh, that's cold. Am I the jerk for refusing to give my former brother-in-law's stepkids access to my late sister's possessions? My sister Anna passed 8 years ago. She had 2 boys, Luca and Milo, with her husband. The boys were her whole world, and when she realized she wasn't going to make it, she took me aside and told me she wanted me to look after her possessions, which included her small jewelry collection, a couple of very fancy art supplies, think custom paintbrushes kind of thing, some stuffed animals she had had since childhood, and some family photos and baby books and blankets saved that belonged to our family. She told me she knew her husband would move on, and she worried he would allow any future kids of his to have her stuff, instead of her boys once they became of age. She made me promise I would keep them for the boys once they moved out. I made her the promise and I kept it. He knew about it and was extremely unhappy with Anna's decision. He felt betrayed and like they should be just as much his as hers, but legally he couldn't do anything. My former brother-in-law remarried 6 years ago and has 2 stepdaughters as well as a biological daughter. Luca and Milo come to my house 1 weekend a month, which was ordered by the courts. And while they are with me, they have admitted to feeling like their dad wants them to treat the 3 girls like their mom's kids. He had asked them to ask me to give the girls the jewelry and stuffed animals. The boys also told me he had shown the girls the photos of the 2 of them with the stuffed animals, and the girls got really jealous. They said they don't want their mom's stuff to go to them. I promised them it would not, and I would give it to them one day. Former brother-in-law's oldest stepdaughter is turning 13 soon, and apparently she wanted my sister's locket or a look-alike. He approached me about it, and I told him no way. He told me I was being selfish, and they are Milo and Luca's sisters, and Anna's memory should be shared with them, and they should feel like they have a guardian angel looking out for them. I told him Anna had not wanted that, and her priority would have always been her kids over kids that he had or took on with someone else. I told him those 3 girls had nothing to do with Anna and were not entitled to any of her possessions. He called me a jerk and told me I was making the girls feel bad, and that even if Anna never met them, I should have accepted them as family and done my best to treat them. He also brought up my not even letting them see the things in person, the stuffed animals especially, and I do remember his younger stepdaughter, who is 10, was upset to not get to see them. It makes me wonder if I'm being too harsh with the kids, but I also don't want them to get attached either because they will never actually get anything from me, and the boys don't consider them sisters, so it's unlikely they will ever give them anything either. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk, and wow. How did your sister predict your brother-in-law's future behavior so well? OP. I'm not sure. I never expected her to worry about that stuff, but when she got sick, she did. She would never tell me where it came from either, but I have to wonder if it's how he responded once they learned that she wasn't going to make it. Only jerk here is brother-in-law. Why would the girls even want this stuff if he weren't showing it off, trying to manipulate the situation to get the things? So weird. Not the jerk. Not the jerk. This is exactly why your sister was so concerned. Stand your ground and call him out that this is precisely why his wife didn't trust him and asked you to look after her stuff, and that you will be sticking to that very promise to her. Am I the jerk for sneaking out of the restaurant after my fiancé told me to pay for his and his friend's meal? I, 33 female, have been engaged to my fiancé, male 37, for 5 months. We don't share finances because that's what he wants. I got a raise on my salary. Now I earn 30% more than he does, and I notice that he's been using this to ask me to pay for him and his friends. Whenever I say no, or why should I pay for this, he'd respond with, the 30%, that's why, and act as if the 30% is unfair or that I'm not deserving of it. Several times, he has tricked me into paying for his and his friends' meals by asking me publicly. Let me say that I'm too nice to say no. I hate confrontation, especially when we're at a public place like a restaurant, so I just grin and pay. Last Tuesday, he asked me to join him and his buddies for dinner. I told him from the start I wasn't paying for their food and he shouldn't expect me to. He said he got this and no worries. We got to the restaurant, met his friends, ordered food, and in the middle of the meal, he leaned in and whispered that I would be paying for everything he and his friends ordered. I got so mad, I whispered back, no. But he probably relied on me not causing a scene in public and in front of his friends. He said,
You have enough money. You could pay for everyone's food. 30%, remember?
I was fuming inside. Instead of reacting negatively and losing my temper, I waited till the bills arrived. They were already split from the start when we first ordered. I paid for mine, then I excused myself to the restroom. I then sneaked out from there, got into my car, and went home. I started getting phone calls from my fiancé, then texts asking where I was. I texted back saying I didn't appreciate how he put me in this situation and basically tricking me into paying for his and his friends' food. I told him I went home and then stopped replying. An hour later, he came and started yelling at me, calling me selfish, irrational, cheapskate, childish for sneaking out, stuff like that, and for leaving him stuck with a bill he could not pay. He had to call his brother for help. We had a loud argument, then he walked out. His friends didn't speak to me on this, but he told me that they're disappointed in my behavior and are telling him to take time and reflect on the type of woman he's going to be married to. Am I the jerk for what I did? Is what he's expecting from me fair or justified? ETA, some info. 1. He said that because the restaurant wasn't expensive, then I could have just paid. 2. He admitted not telling me about it till later, knowing I'd refuse. He still thinks my reaction was childish and unacceptable. Why are you marrying someone who insists that his money is his money, but your money is also his money? Not the jerk. OP. Yes, I don't say a word about how and where he spends his salary. He does intend on dictating how I spend my money sometimes. But now with the raise thing, he's admittedly gotten more aggressive. I keep trying to get to the root of the issue, but to no avail. The root of the issue is that he's selfish and controlling and doesn't respect you. Along with a nice dash of insecurity that he's no longer better than you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or her fiancé? Please let us know. Dude sounds like a real jerk, to be honest. Is there like anything good about him? Entitled Karen thinks my parents' land is hers. So a little backstory, as it'll be much needed in this story. My parents live in a gated community and got their house custom built. They purchased the land separately, as originally they were selling it all together, and all they needed was 3 acres, not 5, for the house. So they purchased one plot for the house and the other plot next to it and left it empty for privacy, since if they bought it all together, they would have had to pay double the property tax. Now onto the story. It was about 7 p.m. and 25 minutes until sundown, so I was in my room texting when I saw flashlights on the land we have next to the house. So I told my dad and we both went out there, thinking it was the HOA, as they usually check to see if the trees aren't overgrown. So we went out there and see what we'll know as Karen in this story. Her husband,
and her son, which looked to be about 14 to 16, with a BB gun and traps. This is where it starts. Dad: "Hey, can we help you?" Karen:
No, we're just hunting. This is a really nice neighborhood.
"First off, how did she even get in? Unless she had a code or knew someone who lived here, she couldn't even get in." Dad: "Sorry, but we own this land and you can't hunt here. Also, no animals come through here except squirrels or some occasional deer." Karen:
No, this is public land. And okay, we will set traps for the deer.
This is where the Kevin, aka the father, comes in. Kevin:
Is there a problem?
Karen:
They say they own this land, but I doubt that.
"I went into the house and called the community security. They were obviously trespassing, as even when my dad said it was private-owned land, they set traps. I didn't hear the rest of the conversation, but when the security came, this is what happened." Karen:
This man is bullying my son for hunting.
Security: "This is private-owned property. Even if it wasn't, you can't hunt in a community you don't live in." Turns out they were already looking for her, as when they were looking over the community gate footage, they followed behind another car that put in the code. Long story short, they were kicked out of the neighborhood, and if they ever come back without a valid reason, they would get trespassed and the police will be called. The whole time, the son just looked embarrassed and looked like he didn't even want to go hunting. I'll update this when I get the full story on what happened when I went inside. Update: this is what happened when I went inside. Karen's husband:
Even if you do own this land, you obviously don't use it. Come on, we drove an hour to come here, and you seriously can't let us hunt deer?
Dad: "No, I'm sorry, but Karen."
Plus, it'll be good for the community. Less deer is less noise in the middle of the night. It can also stop accidents from the deer getting run over.
Dad: "That's up to the community if you can hunt deer, and I might use the land in the future. I don't want dead deer on the land." From what my dad said, they didn't have a car big enough to put the deer meat in, so most likely they were going to leave it there. Karen:
Exactly. By us getting the deer, it'll stop them from being on the land when you build it. And you can just take the deer. It should be easy.
Dad: "I'm going to call security if you don't leave. How did you get in here? Do you live here?" Karen's husband:
It's not up to you. We will wait for security.
My dad was walking to come in and call security, but he didn't know I went inside to call them. They came around a minute later. Getting revenge by pouring a pint of Coke on a customer. Just to set the scene of how much of a jerk this regular customer was. 2 weeks before this story takes place, this particular customer walked into the restaurant on a Wednesday night with about 40 people. The restaurant was only about 120 covers, and we rarely filled more than 70 of them midweek, so only had 2/3 servers on unless we had large bookings, demanding a table for all of them. Being a regular, the host already knew he was a piece of work, but the horror on her face when he revealed that he didn't have a booking still haunts me to this day. The host calls the general manager over, who's delighted at the opportunity to up our sales for the night, and sits them in an area of the restaurant that's kept closed unless we're particularly busy. Unfortunately, I was the server with the most experience that night, so I ended up serving them along with a few other tables, while the other servers picked up the empty tables in my area. Long story short, they were all generally jerks all night, got far too drunk, made far too much noise, mistreated the runners because they couldn't carry out 40 plates of food in one go, etc. I gave them the best darn service I could have given, only to receive a 25-cent tip. And when the general manager questioned him, he responded,
I'm a regular here, and I never tip because I don't believe in it. So count yourself lucky that you're getting anything.
Manager is not happy. Back to the story. Jerk customer returns for his bi-weekly meal with his family, and much to my dismay, ends up sat in my area. I go over to the table and am greeted with,
Oh, for goodness sake, not you again.
The effort it took not to say, I was thinking the same thing, was unreal. I ignored it and carried on. His wife and daughter, being visibly irritated and embarrassed by his behavior, at least made me feel a little bit better. Orders taken, starters are done, main course is out. I go to do a check back and offer another round of drinks. Along with a few other drinks around the table, his son orders a pint of Coke. When I get back to the table with the drinks, being the jerk that he is, Jerk refuses my polite request to move slightly so that I can pass drinks around, and ignores me when I ask if he can pass the drinks over for me, leaving me no option but to lean over the table. Restaurant is pretty cramped. They were in a corner of the room. It's unfortunate, but it happens. I pass the first drink over to his daughter, leaving only the pint of Coke on the tray I'm carefully balancing in my other hand. As I return to standing to get the pint of Coke, I mess up. The pint glass has fallen on my tray in the direction of jerk customer and literally rained down an entire pint of Coke and ice all over the guy. I'm holding back laughter. His wife and daughter are losing their crap laughing. His son only seems concerned that he isn't getting the pint of Coke he wanted. I look up to see neighboring tables, who I can only presume heard him being a jerk, chuckling. And then in the distance across the room, manager's face has contorted into some bizarre display of both amusement and fear. Now comes the expected bad treatment from angry customer. Manager literally runs to my defense. Jerk customer stands up, picks up his wife, and announces that they are leaving and won't be coming back, much to the dismay of his son, who is literally cramming spaghetti into his mouth as fast as he can. Kid was clearly hungry. Can't really blame him. The guy looks like he's been involved in some kind of Coke and Mentos experiment gone wrong. Manager apologizes profusely and doesn't charge them. Every front of house employee in the restaurant thanked me when it became clear in the following weeks that he really wasn't coming back. Surprisingly, the cleanup wasn't that bad. His hair and clothes seemed to have absorbed the majority of the liquid, and it was pretty much just ice on the floor. The neighboring table said as they were leaving, "We'll definitely be coming back, and we hope the entertainment is just as good next time." Manager didn't mention it until I handed in my notice, and all he wanted to say was it was the best thing he's ever witnessed a server do to a customer. Messing up never felt so good. Karen mother tries to marry me off to a stranger. I went out on a Friday for a few hours with some friends. Just some shopping and catching up. I haven't seen some of them for the last 2 years because of lockdown, when we used to hang out almost every week. And I'm leaving the country in a few weeks, so we took this opportunity to use as a catch-up and a farewell party. I was out from late afternoon to about 9 or 10 p.m. When I got home, I took out my keys to unlock the gate, but it wouldn't fit. I tried to turn the key around, yes, like a USB, thinking it might fit the other way, but it still would not fit. I called my mother and she didn't pick up. I called my grandmother, who lives with me, but she was out with her friends as well and wouldn't be home anytime soon. At this point, I was angry. My mother already burnt a couple of my work pants the day before because I refused to wear a dress to work. My line of work requires me to move around a lot, so a dress or an office skirt was not suited for my environment. I shook the gate, but no one was home, so I picked the lock. I opened the metal gate after a few tries. Luckily, the wooden door behind it was not locked. The neighbors did call the cops on me, and of course, I had to show them that I actually lived there and this was my legal address. I took some essentials and went to stay at my friend's house for the night because I couldn't lock the door back, and I didn't feel safe in the house without a locked door. The next day, my grandmother and I were invited to go to a pre-wedding event. It was kind of a meeting the elders and engagement party / ceremony at a cafe. My mother only sent me the address in time for it. It was perfectly normal for my grandmother to be invited to these things via my mother. My grandmother doesn't know how to use a phone other than basic functions like calling. We showed up on time to the cafe and were escorted to a booth-type seat at the corner of the cafe. The booth already had a lady who was in her mid-40s and a guy. I assumed she was the mother and the guy was her son. The moment we sat down, the lady took out a calendar and notepads filled with lists of flower arrangements, color schemes, menus, dresses, hairstyles, etc. She introduced her son, who is 28 by the way, told me what he does for a living, what he studies, and where. She thanked me for agreeing to marry him. I just looked at her, then to her son, then to the wedding planners and notes. Then it finally registered that this was for my wedding. My grandmother was upset to say the least. I apologized to this lady and said there must be some kind of misunderstanding between us, because I came here to attend someone else's engagement party, not to plan my own, and added that I was only 20 this year. My grandmother then rudely asked why she thought that I would be marrying her son. The lady replied that my mother had contacted her and said that I was looking for a partner and a husband to settle down with, so I could move out. My grandmother calmly said to the lady that she's been lied to, and I was not going to be getting married anytime soon. She said her son seems nice and hopes that he finds someone who likes him to marry in the future, but it was not going to be me. We got up and left. When we got home, I found my things stuffed in a black plastic bag outside the door. My grandmother opened the door and told me to bring my stuff inside. The moment I stepped through the door, my mother yelled that she put so much effort into finding a guy who would talk to a girl like me to marry, and that I should just be grateful. She didn't just try to marry me off to some older guy.
and I should be happy she found someone around my age. She told me I embarrassed her because the mother called her and told her what she did was not okay and to not do it again without even asking or informing me properly. My grandmother started to shout at my mother in Cantonese, which resulted in them being in a heated argument for almost 30 minutes, and my grandmother kicked out my mother, which of course she moaned about and cried about before leaving. But I didn't retire. My friend, I'll call her Sandy, worked at a travel agency in British Columbia, Canada. It was a small owner-operated business with the owner and 3 employees, including my friend. Everyone worked Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. One of my friend's coworkers, I'll call her Jane, an older woman in her early to mid-60s, was a longtime nuisance employee. Among other sketchy behavior, Jane was always scamming ways to take time off over and above her official paid vacation time. In order to make up for the lost hours, she would claim overtime hours and pay by supposedly going into the office during her off hours to finish up work without even being requested by the owner to do so. Despite being caught in her own lies on a number of occasions and being warned about trying to claim for unsanctioned overtime, the owner of the travel agency was reluctant to officially reprimand Jane or get rid of her. The reason being is the owner discovered after she had hired Jane that Jane had actually been fired from her previous job at another local travel agency for pulling the same stunts. However, Jane had sued her former employer for unfair dismissal and had won a settlement. After a few years of my friend Sandy working at the travel agency, the owner was ready to retire and offered to sell the business to my friend. Sandy took her up on the deal and took over the business while keeping on Jane and the other employee. Once again, just as the previous owner was afraid to get rid of Jane, so was Sandy for fear of being sued. When Sandy took over the business, she instituted guidelines regarding taking time off, and she established an official no overtime policy. Jane would still try with her shenanigans, but was far less successful in getting what she wanted with my friend in charge. However, Jane still had one trick up her sleeve when she wanted to take time off on a whim. Sandy was a divorced single mom of 2 boys who were heavily involved in youth hockey. She would sometimes leave the office an hour or 2 before closing to get her boys to hockey practice or a game. In order to avoid requesting in person and potentially being denied, Jane would wait for Sandy to be out of the office to book a day off if she didn't feel like coming into work or had made plans. Sandy would then arrive at work the next morning only to discover that Jane wasn't coming in. Despite this happening a number of times, Sandy would usually let it slide since there was now a definite no overtime policy. Therefore, Jane could no longer claim to come into work on the weekend or after hours in order to try and make up for the day off. She would either miss out on a day's pay, in turn saving Sandy money as the owner, or it would come out of her remaining paid vacation days. Moreover, 2 people in the office at one time could usually handle everything. Jane not coming in was really a no-loss situation for Sandy. There was one time, however, when Sandy was going to be away for 1 to 2 work days just before the weekend to take her boys to a hockey tournament. She told both Jane and the other employee, both verbally and in writing, that they could not book time off for the dates in question since she would be away and needed both of them in the office. Within a few days of giving this notice, Sandy went into the office on a Saturday to do some paperwork and go through the sales for the week. This is when she discovered that, only the day before, Jane had booked a trip for her daughter and son-in-law to Las Vegas, as well as a plane ticket in her name to Calgary, where her daughter lived. Both the trip to Vegas and the trip to Calgary coincided with the dates Sandy would be out of the office. Sandy then checked the vacation booking schedule to further discover that Jane had indeed booked the days off that she had expressly been told she couldn't have. Not mentioning she had discovered the travel Jane had booked for herself and her daughter, Sandy emailed Jane telling her she would have to deny her days off since she had already been told they were unavailable because she, Sandy, would be away and needed Jane in the office. Through a continued series of email exchanges, Jane replied and outright lied to Sandy with some excuse about her daughter getting some long-awaited medical treatment or surgery, and she needed to go to Calgary to help out for a few days and to look after her granddaughter. Sandy replied to this lie by telling Jane she knew about the trip she had booked to Vegas for her daughter and son-in-law, that Jane's trip to Calgary was most likely to babysit her granddaughter while her daughter was in Vegas, and that she would still have to deny Jane the days off, especially since she booked them after being told they were unavailable. Jane countered in her subsequent reply without even addressing the fact that she had been caught in a lie, that she had been a dedicated employee of the travel agency for several years and couldn't understand why she was being treated so unfairly after all she had done for the business. She then wrote that since she wasn't being treated as a valued employee, she had no choice but to retire and was giving her 2 weeks' notice. Despite Jane's threat, Sandy replied that she would still be unable to grant her the days off and left it at that without making any mention of Jane's threat to quit and retire. Sandy then contacted her accountant, who also acted as her de facto business advisor, and explained what had happened with Jane. Also aware of Jane's previous shenanigans, Sandy's accountant told her that this was the out she had been looking for with Jane, and she had it all in writing. He told her that Jane had essentially resigned/retired, and all Sandy needed to do was honor Jane's desire to do so, let her finish out her 2 weeks, or pay her 2 weeks' wages in lieu with no further severance pay, legally required since she hadn't been fired. The following Monday, Sandy went into the office early, accompanied by her long-term boyfriend to act as a witness. She put Jane's belongings from her desk into a box and took the things that were property of the business. Since Jane was old school and had resisted inputting client information in the company database, this also included a small box filled with index cards which had client phone numbers, addresses, credit card information, and other personal information noted on them. In the meantime, the other employee had arrived for work and they all waited for Jane to show up. Jane arrived just before 9 o'clock, acting as though nothing had happened, and greeted everyone with a "Good morning" as she walked through the door. However, she was apparently taken slightly aback when she noticed Sandy's boyfriend seated in the far corner of the office. At this point, Jane was midway to her desk when Sandy informed her that there was no need to go any further and that she had accepted Jane's notification of retirement. She then handed Jane a check compensating her for the hours she had worked in the current pay period, as well as 2 weeks' wages in lieu of Jane finishing out her 2 final weeks before her retirement. Jane was dumbfounded and went into panic mode. "But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire." Sandy responded that indeed she had retired, given her notice, and had proof of it in writing. All Jane could do was continue repeating, "But I didn't retire. I'm not ready to retire," while unsuccessfully attempting to get the support of the other employee, who refused to come to her defense. Sandy then pointed to the box containing Jane's belongings, wished her a happy retirement, and told her to leave the office. Jane quickly rifled through the box and noticed that the small box containing the index cards with client information was not there. She insisted that Sandy return it to her, which Sandy refused to do, explaining that it was property of the business, contained personal client information, and that she would be in violation of Canadian privacy laws if she were to let Jane take it. Jane's shock had now turned to obstinance, and she refused to leave without the box. Both the other employee and Sandy's boyfriend had started to get involved, repeatedly telling Jane to just leave. Sandy then informed Jane that if she didn't leave, they would have to call the RCMP, Canadian Police, at which point Sandy's boyfriend dialed 911 to inform the dispatcher of a disgruntled former employee at XYZ Travel Agency who was refusing to leave the premises. Within a few minutes, 2 officers arrived, and Jane immediately ran to the door, ranting about being fired and about the missing box of client info. In order to de-escalate the situation, one officer told Jane to come outside and explain to him her side of the story. The other officer remained in the office to hear Sandy's side of the story, agreeing that Jane was not legally entitled to the box of client info. The other officer then re-entered the business and told Jane to wait outside. He said that Jane was insisting that Sandy was holding on to her personal belongings, namely a box of important information. Both Sandy and the other officer who had spoken to her explained the contents of the box to the other officer, who in turn agreed it was not Jane's property. The police officers then picked up the larger box of Jane's belongings, took it outside to Jane, and told her she needed to go home. To rub salt in Jane's wounds, the next day, Sandy put up a large sign in the window of the business, congratulating Jane on her retirement, and even put a small announcement in the local newspaper doing the same thing. The icing on the piece of revenge cake was Sandy, when filling out the necessary government forms for when an employee quits or gets fired or retires, made sure to check the box labeled retired for the reason for Jane no longer being employed. By doing so, Jane was ineligible to collect unemployment insurance benefits. Am I the jerk for kicking out my boyfriend and his daughter? I started seeing a guy roughly a year and a half ago. He has a 9-year-old, almost 10-year-old daughter named Chrissy. I have an 11-year-old son as well. We met each other's kids 3 months back, and last month they started having weekend visits here. It's been a super hard adjustment for me especially. The kids get along for the most part, but I'm just having a really hard time. My son has always been a fairly good kid and hardly ever given me issues. He never drew on walls or broke anything of importance or talked back. Aside from occasionally, obviously, no kid is perfect, and he was always super quick to ask permission to touch my stuff. I personally think I lucked out, and I knew that not all kids were as well behaved as my kid, but I wasn't ready, I don't think. I'm just overwhelmed. So since she has been doing weekend visits here, she stays in my guest room. She has destroyed a lot, rips holes in the mattress, and then says they were already there. They weren't. Draws on the walls and windowsill with makeup and marker. She put a hole in my wall and said it was already there. I can buy a brand new thing of shampoo and conditioner and it's 100% gone and in the trash by the end of her shower, which lasts 45 minutes every single time. She stomps her feet and slams doors when we have to speak to her and knocks things off the walls. She's generally a good kid, but she is so destructive. What really set me off was her coming here this weekend with her dad. My son was at his father's, and I was called into the office to do a signing which would only take roughly an hour max, so I left them here without me. Well, when I got back, she was sitting at the kitchen table with all of my photo albums laying in front of her, cutting out the faces and everything else on these photos and gluing them to her scrapbook. Photos that I cannot get back, as they were printed out years ago when I was in foster care, and those were the only copies I had. Photos of my friends that have passed as well. I went to my boyfriend, who was on the phone outdoors, and told him they needed to leave, explained the situation, and told him I was done. Those photos, as stupid as it may be, were a huge part of my childhood, and now they are destroyed. I told him I was done speaking to him about his daughter destroying my stuff, and it was time to go. He thinks I'm the jerk for throwing a year and a half down the drain over some pictures. Am I? Not the jerk. That would upset me too. He sounds like a bad father. Curious what his responses have been to her destroying your stuff in the past. If he doesn't respect your property, he doesn't respect you. OP. He has the same, "you know you can't do that" talk with her every time. That's literally it. The same conversation every single time. He said it so much to her that she will literally say it with him and then be like, "Yeah, Dad, I know. You've already told me." And then she will be good for like a day and go right back to it. Not the jerk. It wasn't over the pictures. Is he stupid? It's about the disrespect he's been allowing to happen, and that was the last straw for you. Honestly, good kids don't do that kind of stuff. If any of my stepkids had done those kinds of things, I'd have done the exact same thing as you. It's just plain rude. Not the jerk. That sounds heart-rending. After all of the previous incidents, why wasn't he supervising her? He's at fault just as much as she is. OP. He's always on the phone with his father. His mother is ill and they live in another state, so his dad calls very often with updates and stuff, and I totally get that, but the second he leaves the room, his daughter is destroying something. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk for kicking them out or not? Please let us know. That kid sounds like an absolute monster. You know what they say, spare the rod, spoil the brat. Am I the jerk for telling my cousin she ate meat? I, 22 female, have a cousin who's 21, Paige. She's vegan. I love her. She's always been like a sister to me. On my dad's side, I have another cousin who's 26, Dave. He's a really nice person too, but I didn't really grow up with him as he's older and his family lives far away from us. Well, 2 days ago, we were at this dinner my aunt, Dave's mom, was hosting. It was a dinner to celebrate Dave's engagement. Dave's fiancée, Laura, insisted on cooking. Apparently, she's very well known for her food, and everyone in my family who's tasted her food loves it. I personally never had, and I was open to it as I love trying new stuff. While Laura was cooking, Paige approached her to remind her that she's vegan. She took the time to do it before Laura started dinner. Fast forward to dinner. I found some meat in it. Paige asked me about it, which Laura responded and said she used fake meat for Paige. She didn't doubt Laura started to eat. I will admit, I found it quite odd that Laura had fake meat, or that my aunt would have had any since they're both carnivorous. After dinner, almost everyone was outside, but 3 of us, including Laura.
I asked her if she really used fake meat for Paige, and she said,
"Oh no, if she's vegan, she gotta bring her own food,"
while laughing. I was shocked and in disbelief. I went outside, pulled Paige aside, and I told her. I just couldn't keep it from her, and I felt bad for Paige. I saw the anger rising up in her face while she got up and screamed at Laura inside the house. What she didn't know is that everyone else could hear. It ended up with Laura being completely embarrassed and Paige leaving the house. Laura went up to me screaming that I shouldn't have told her and that everyone was having a great time until I opened up my mouth. Everyone at the dinner are taking her side, saying I shouldn't have said anything and that it wasn't my business. They all said that Laura was new to the family and that it was wrong of me to embarrass her like that. I don't know what to do. All of them are saying I did something wrong and that it could have just been a one-time thing and that Paige would have never noticed. She messaged me earlier saying thank you for telling her. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. Laura was 1000% the jerk for saying it was fake meat when it wasn't. She could have just told the truth and maybe Paige could have eaten around it. Serving meat to a person who is vegan without them knowing is truly messed up. Not the jerk. Laura was pretty malicious here and wanted to lie about it because, haha, vegans are fun to mess with. I'm not a vegan myself, but we need to respect other people's dietary choices and restrictions. If we want to take it a step further, if your cousin had been vegan for long enough time, her digestive system would have been sensitive to meat, and she may not have been able to digest it without getting sick since her body would no longer be used to it. Effectively, the fiancé would be fine giving someone food poisoning because everyone else is having a good time. Not the jerk. Laura is marrying into the family and refusing to respect another family member. Paige deserved to know. And to any family that tells you that you were in the wrong, throw that respect right at them. Just like Laura didn't respect Paige's request for vegan food, I feel no need to respect Laura's desire for me to keep silent. Paige deserved to know who in this family is going to treat her with respect and who isn't. Now we all know. Impressive combination of self-righteousness and perfect timing for maximal drama. No host should lie to someone who asks what's in a dish, but part of you knows that it was a jerk way to handle things, unless you just came here for a victory lap. Everyone sucks here. Everyone sucks here. No need to cover why the aunt is the jerk. You can read the other 50 comments for that. But who just rocks up to a party and reminds the cook that they're vegan? Auntie's probably been cooking half the day. Even if she's been a vegan forever and it's well known, you aren't in a restaurant. The aunt was doing her normal cooking. If she had had some notice, she could have bought something at the shop to accommodate. Turning up and reminding someone about their issues is a jerk move. I'm a celiac. If I go to a gathering, I'm either taking my own food, making sure in advance there's something I can eat, or going hungry and not saying a darn thing. If you've got dietary requirements, that's on you to figure out. I hate putting anyone out for what's a me problem. You might find the rest of your family are more annoyed at your cousin rocking up at the 11th hour than anything else. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or Laura? Please let us know. Why do some people just love to feed meat to vegans without them knowing about it? And y'all thought I was evil. You can't work overtime even though we're 3,000 behind. Okay, I won't then. I used to work for this horrible job. I was a calibration technician, and my job along with the two others we had was to keep our tools and robots in the plant in line with our customer specs. Failure to do so would allow our customers to pull out of their contracts with no legal ramifications, so an important job. However, the rest of the plant didn't think so, and neither did my supervisor, who the company hired off the street with literally no knowledge of the job at all. Story for another day there. Anyways, we were behind on calibrations big time. This was due mostly to the fact that the lines refused to give us the tools to calibrate them because they didn't want to affect production, and my so-called supervisor had no spine and kept telling us to work around it. For reference, we kept 6,000 different tools and robots calibrated, and almost 3,000 in the system were overdue. So yeah, we were in trouble, and it was only a matter of time. One of our customers had called and said the next Monday they were coming in for an inspection, which you think would be a big ol' "oh no" moment, but no one seemed to care. I volunteered to work that weekend to get everything on that customer's line calibrated so we could avoid the crap storm. But my boss told me that he couldn't approve any overtime without a detailed list of what I planned to do. I told him I couldn't give him a list ahead of time as I had no clue which tools were where or what I would have to replace.
but I could log it all as I went and give it to him Monday. He said no, it was either now or I wasn't allowed to show up, so I didn't. Next Monday, customer comes in. Within an hour of him being there, realizes almost all of their tools and robots are 4 months out of date. Immediately shuts down production, sends those employees home, and pulls their contract because now they had to recall 4 months worth of product. They start slamming on my department, to which I just looked at my boss, laughed, and then quit. Because forget that. One of my friends that worked there after I left told me the customer renegotiated their contract much more in their favor, meaning the company got paid way less than they were originally per product, and the company took a loss on profits that year because apparently the customer went and told all the other customers it could, and a crap storm hit that place. They ended up selling the place after another year. Landlord tries to defraud us and ends up losing his visa instead. This happened a long time ago, but I recently found out about the end result and figured that it might belong here. If you've never heard of the US EB-5 visa program, then don't worry, I hadn't either. From what little research I've gathered, this is essentially a program where foreign nationals can fast-track US residency visa status by contributing financially to approved community investment projects. I don't think that the specifics are that relevant, but feel free to add if I've missed anything important. So when my husband and I were still dating and first looked for a place to live together, we settled on a small townhouse. It was old and needed work, but the rent was reasonable and it was in a neighborhood we liked. The landlord had recently purchased the property, but didn't live there and wanted renters to help pay for the mortgage, I assume. We found the house on a realty website. It had been sold less than a month before we moved in and still had photographs posted by the seller. This will be important later. We liked the place, applied, and got accepted. We moved in and lived happily ever after. The end. No, but seriously, landlord left us alone. We lived there for a few years, paid rent on time, never had issues until we moved out. We had to pay nearly $5,000 in refundable security deposits, and when we moved out, our landlord repaid half. We were confused, as the lease laid out the steps the landlord had to take in order for them to keep the deposit. Central to that requirement, landlord had 45 days to provide us with an itemized list of damages we caused, as well as the cost to fix each thing. 45 days came and went, and no itemized list. So we contacted them and asked for the list. We received a mostly blank one-page invoice for $2,500 to repaint, remove TV mounts, patch holes, etc. It wasn't itemized, and there were no individual charges. So we asked for pictures of the alleged damages. Landlord immediately got hostile and refused. So we filed suit. Landlord hired an attorney to represent him, and the attorney submitted an itemized list as well as pictures. We printed date-stamped copies of the photos posted by the previous realtor, the same photos submitted by landlord's clueless lawyer. The clerk overseeing the matter found in our favor immediately because landlord had lied about the photographic evidence. Landlord was also found to be in breach of contract and was assessed treble damages plus interest, penalties, and court costs. Yay for us. But he didn't pay, so we submitted to a collection agency. I don't really understand the particulars. We eventually recovered most of the final judgment, so we were happy and left it at that. Until, unbeknownst to us, landlord was an EB-5 applicant. Apparently, the breach of contract, collection, and shenanigans surrounding the dishonesty regarding the lawsuit made it back to whomever was reviewing their visa application. There were other issues too, I'm sure. Landlord's visa application was denied. He ended up having to cash out of his US investments and won't be eligible for this visa again. The final outcome was an unintended consequence, but I kind of feel like he got what he deserved. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard.
Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.